FM.
What's up? Another episode of Rupe Podcast. I'm your host, Grimerica, the Reds, also known as Rick Verandas, and a great episode for you today. A lot to go through, so I'll try to make this quick. The family and I just got back from Florida. We went down there to visit my wife's family and to celebrate my wife's birthday. It was nice to leave a state that felt like communist China with dictator Baker and go to a state that felt like America and people were free and living, and it felt post-COVID. It felt like it was actually post-2020 and things were somewhat to normal, some sense of normal. And if you guys want to hear more about my experience down there, if you guys aren't familiar with it, I have a show called Ricky Rants Rockfin, and I did a episode while in Florida, so check that out. The links to that show will be in the show description. Everything I discuss in the intro will be in the show description, so it's easy. It'll be super easy to find the URLs and to find links to everything I'm discussing. But the show is called Ricky Rants and Rockfin. Rockfin.com/ripple effect. You can find it there. And a lot of people are on Rockfin. Whitney Webb, Jason Burmis, Ryan from Last American Vagabond, Sam Tripoli, Charlie Robinson, Grimerica. I mean, so many great shows and people are on Rockfin. So when you go on there and you support Rockfin, you support all of us. You support all those content creators you enjoy. And you can also just create a free account if you want to just enjoy all the free content. And then if you want the premium content, it's kind of like a Netflix monthly payment thing, but you get access to everybody's premium content, like my solo show called Ricky Rants and Rockfin. And very soon, I think I'm going to also have Matt from Content Safe get my archives, my video archives, also on my Rockfin account. Right now, he's the one who is helping me get all my YouTube archives. He's the one who got all that stuff onto BitChute and Odyssey and Library and Float. So now I'm in discussions with him in regards to doing the same thing with Rockfin. I just want to have it as many places as possible. And if we do accomplish this, then it'll be my free content on Rockfin, and then my solo show, my new show, Ricky Rants and Rockfin, will be my premium content. So definitely check out Rockfin and support myself by following me, subscribing to my channel, and you can also tip us on Rockfin. So plenty of ways of supporting content creators you like. And then I also have a Patreon page. I know some people are leaving Patreon because they're pissed about some of the censorship. I haven't put any content on Patreon. I just give you guys updates. If you're a Patreon supporter, I give you updates on who's gonna be on the show. And I have some great guests coming up that if you're a Patreon supporter, you'll be aware of. And I also have a Patreon podcast I do once a month, which I plan on doing very soon in the next week or so. And it's a podcast I do with my Patreon supporters. Then I release it as a episode. But in the show description, I'll have links to my Patreon page. I'm having a hard time talking today. I'll have links to my Patreon page, and I'll also have links to my PayPal account. So if you guys want to just tip the show, if that's easier for you, just directly tip the show, do that. So there's plenty of ways of supporting the show. You can help me on Rockfin, follow me, subscribe to me, tip me on Rockfin. You can support me on Patreon, and you'll get all the guest updates and all that type of stuff, and also be able to participate in Patreon podcasts. I have a PayPal account, and I also have a merch store. So if you want to support the show by purchasing some merch, you'll see me repping much of the Ripple Effect Podcast merch on many of my episodes. It's rippleeffectpodcastmerch.com. That will also be in the show description. So please order some stuff, support the podcast, and you know, it's another great way of helping the show. And as you guys know, my show is available everywhere. It's on Library, Odyssey, Flow, BitChute, and it's also now, and this will lead me into my guest today, Joe Rupe. He is the founder, creator of Fringe.fm. You've been hearing me talk about it quite a bit lately. It's a great idea. It's a 24/7 like alternative media radio station. The app is awesome. You just can play it at any time and hear some really interesting conversations and shows. Or you can go to the website, just put in fringe.fm, and you can go to schedules and see what shows are on there and what time they're on. My show is on every Wednesday night at 6 p.m. Eastern Time. Charlie's on there. Grimerica's on there. A bunch of other great shows are coming on to fringe.fm. And you'll get to know Joe today. It was a great conversation. We could have talked for much longer if I wasn't a little bit restricted with time, but I'm sure we'll be chatting again very soon. But just a great idea. So check out fringe.fm. He also has a show called Lightning the Void. And I hope you guys, after this podcast, go out and check out fringe.fm. He's also been doing live streaming the Union of the Unwanted on there. So like our next Union of the Unwanted, which will be on March 8th. And we do them, for people who don't know, we try to do them. And for the most part, I think we've been successful every other Monday at 7 p.m. Eastern Time. So March 8th is the next one. And we're going to do it on the cult. That will be the topic. And I believe he's going to join us and live stream it on fringe.fm. So it'll be live streamed on our YouTube channel as always. But if you just want to hear the audio, now you can go to fringe.fm and hear it there. So just many different ways to listen to the Union of the Unwanted. It's also on Spotify, iTunes, YouTube, Odyssey Library, all that stuff. So it's available in many different places. If you guys haven't checked out that show, personally, it's a very important show. It's a show that's very near to my heart because of the community we've created with it. Really helped us brainstorm solutions to kind of fight back against censorship and some of the other issues that us content creators are dealing with. So with that said, I think that's finally enough talking for me. Enjoy the conversation, and I'll see you guys on the next one.
What's up, man? Can you hear me?
Sound good.
Awesome. Cool. I'm kind of in a dark cave, though, a little bit, so.
It's funny. I was just doing a little video for a documentary on Iconic, David Icke's platform, and they wanted me to do some, a little video or whatever. And I did a high def. I'm like, oh, how do I do this video in high def? And I'm like, oh, I don't look so good in high def. I'm like, I'll be mad if it's a little grainy.
No, I just I don't do video a lot. I don't mind it. I'm so focused on radio station stuff. I'm always in like cave mode, most of the time. So
Yeah, it's funny you say that because you hear people like the No Agenda guys and they hate video. Grimerica, they don't really care too much about video. It just, I mean, maybe it's the radio, I guess, background maybe, or is it just because it's like if you're listening to a conversation, what you're seeing isn't really as important as what you're hearing.
it's definitely like radio has a mystery to it kind of thing. Like back when I used to listen to Art Bell, and he'd talk about, yeah, we're out here and we see this triangle craft in the sky, and Ramona's out back with a shotgun, and you can just hear the voice, and it's like mystery or theater of the mind, right? And I think it definitely has something to do with having a radio background, for sure.
Yeah, it does force you to use your imagination a little bit, right? When you're not visually seeing something, you're like, it's forced. I mean, you're basically recreating what you think is going on in your head, and that does cause a little bit of a mystery to it. And I think sometimes like satisfaction is the death of desire. Like you seeing somebody kind of it takes away from a little of the mystery, like you said. Like it just like you don't know what this person looks like, you don't know if it where they're recording. There's something mysterious about that. And I found myself with music growing up, listening to music on headphones, like on a walk, or just listen to the audio compared to like watching a music video. It was much more intimate, and you would pick up on so many little details of the song that you wouldn't pick up on watching a music video or even just watching the band perform it, because you're distracted by visually what you're seeing. Where if you're only listening to it, growing up, I'm sure many people listening to this now are, it's not live, by the way. And
Yeah, cool. Yeah, that's
But I like to just kind of keep it recording right from the beginning to keep the conversation flowing. But it is one of those things where, like, growing up listening to music in your room by yourself and kind of just sitting there, you could dissect the music a little better. You would pick up on things. You got a better, like, sense of the feelings that the song or the musician was kind of betraying or trying to put out there. So yeah, there is something about audio only. I think podcasts. I mean, the thing about podcasts too is, like, the majority of podcasters, their audience are listeners. You know, I suck on YouTube. I mean, I'm sure there's many reasons why I don't get a whole lot of views on YouTube. Besides
yeah.
besides sucking on YouTube, I think it has a lot to do with censorship and a lot of those things.
Oh, definitely. Yeah, definitely. Like Tim Doyle from UFO Seekers used to he has like a quarter of a million subscribers or whatever before they changed the algorithm. And he's like one of the only official actually YouTube official UFO channels. He's got the official mark, right? But if you type in like UFO Seekers now, they buried him. They buried everybody a long time ago with that YouTube. Anything that had to do with anything that had to do with UFO, paranormal, parapolitical, conspiracy, any of that stuff, they pushed it down on purpose. They definitely did that.
Yeah, well, to kind of stay off the radar, I always said that my stuff wasn't content or wasn't kid friendly, and it was sensitive content, and which forces people to have to be, like, logged in. I believe that to look at it, but at least it's there. So, and most people are probably logged in anyways to some type of YouTube account, and
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
seemed to help a little bit stay off the radar. But I mean, it is getting to a point where, like, literally all they're doing is force feeding you mainstream media. And the thing is, most people who go on YouTube or would go on YouTube to search for information or current events, information about current events or whatever it may be, they were looking for alternative perspectives, not mainstream perspectives. Because if we wanted mainstream perspectives, we just turn on the TV and watch CNN or Fox News or whatever. So now they're, like, completely force feeding you these mainstream, articles and journalists
Yeah.
and news videos. And I'm just like, what the fuck are they doing? They're killing themselves. Because it's like, now nobody's going to go on YouTube and search for any specific topic to find a alternative, opinion or researcher reporting on that. It's getting to the point where, just like, it's forcing people who actually want to go to YouTube to find information to go to all these alternatives like Fringe.fm or BitChute or Odyssey or Float or any of the other alternatives
Yeah.
that are growing in popularity. I mean, Parler's back, and that's finally up and running, which is good. And I get it. People say, oh, it's an echo chamber. Well, you know what? You can make the argument that Twitter's an echo chamber for the left and Parler's an echo chamber for the right. But as long as there's not censorship, I don't care what it's an echo chamber for. I mean, as long as they let me share my perspectives and my opinions and nobody's censoring that, then I'm okay with you using it and putting myself on all the available platforms. But I do feel like YouTube eventually, it's almost like they don't even have any interest
They
in
don't care.
yeah, they don't care. I mean, they just have so much money coming in, and they're in bed with all the mainstream channels and corporations that they don't, people are like, oh, well, you're killing this person who has millions of followers, or that person. Yeah, but those people aren't making the same amount of money or can't offer the same amount of.
Yeah, yeah. It's all about mainstream advertising now. That's what it's all about, man. And even like in the radio business, when I look at, um, because a lot of people don't like these YouTube and all of this stuff really put a damper on what I was trying to do in the beginning with the Fringe FM because I never I never minded the advertising radio model, any of that stuff. I I always thought it's cool to get behind like these mom and pop places or these C2C radios and stuff and really push smaller companies and kind of build a community around that. But because of what YouTube has done and all these people that have done to people, there's such a sour taste for that model now that people are just, they don't want nothing to do with it, right? They're like, I'm just going to go do this value for value or just donate or let's find a blockchain or whatever. I think it's sad that just regular commerce has been so infiltrated with crap, you know, that with the censorship, the way YouTube's doing stuff, the way Google's doing stuff, it's crap, man. And now I even look like every day when I get on here, I do the Fringe FM because it's what I love to do. I love radio, right? That's why I try to keep everything kind of radio modeled. And we even syndicate with terrestrial stations and stuff too. But I see all these, there's just thousands. I have a list of thousands of companies that want to advertise on people's podcasts that have great ideas, just crazy businesses. People even, and I don't know how much I should reveal, but like people that will even pay to come on podcasts and stuff just so they can talk about their ideas. And I look at lists of this stuff and I'm thinking everybody's missing out on the actual, I feel like people are missing out on, um, just doing what they want to do for a living because of the sour taste that YouTube and all these people have done. They've really like pissed everybody off, man, to the point of no return. You know, it feels like sometimes.
Yeah, I agree with you because I've never wanted any. I've had not a whole bunch, but throughout the years, I've had people contact me. Hey, would you want to market our 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 company or a product, or
Yeah.
do you want to do business together, whatever it may be? And I'm always like, no, I'm good, I'm good. I mean, I guess the concern is always like, okay, how long until they feel like they have a say on what's going on?
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
like now I have like a business partner that they're going to want to give their opinion, or maybe they don't want their product on a specific show, or focusing on a specific topic or whatever it may be. So those concerns always made me a little nervous.
They're valid concerns. Yeah.
But I do like the fact that, like somebody, I always have people are like, they're like, dude, you could do this full time. Just, to take, do some business, take advantage of some of your business opportunities with marketers and stuff like that. And I'm just like, I don't know. And they're like, and recently people have been saying this, and it's kind of true. They make a valid point when they're like, well, you listen to Rogan's podcast, you listen to a bunch of podcasts. Some of these products are good products that you would use,
Yeah.
right? And I'm like, yeah, you're kind of right, man. I mean, I guess you could like filter out the stuff that you're not into, or things that you just wouldn't use. But I mean, the thing.
Or you could come up with your own thing, like something that the ripple effect has too. I mean, I totally dig what you're doing. You know, when I partnered up with Amanda, she told me about Union of the Unwanted, and she was like, "You got to go check these guys out." And I already heard about Charlie, right? And so when I listened to you guys, I was like, "Man, yeah, like these guys." And I knew Mike and I knew Grimerica, and I was like, "Yeah, these guys are doing really good stuff," you know. And the cool thing about like doing what I do is I hear people that have like you're definitely one of them, Charlie, people that could go all the way in radio, right? But it is stained. I mean, we're all stained with being censored, with people's agendas, manipulation, you know, to the point where like, I just want to do my thing, right? And see, that's why I respect that too. If people want to do that, I totally respect it, because I understand. I totally understand.
Well, I think the fear too is like you're constantly like, my show, for example, I'm constantly talking about, just not just corrupt governments, but corrupt corporations. If it's a big pharma, if it's a chemical company, whatever it may be, a DuPont, uh, whatever. And it's like when you go in business with corporations, or a company per se, then, but I guess, you could, like you said, you could kind of control that and help promote smaller businesses, mom and pop
Yeah.
businesses, which we're all a fan of. I mean, that was one of my big issues. I mean, one of the many big issues with 2020 was the fact that prior to 2020, small businesses were just blowing up. I mean, people were the trend of society and the culture in America was really going towards support your local businesses. Don't go to the big corporate chain restaurant. Don't go to the big corporate box store. If there's a local business that's a good alternative, use that. Support your local businesses. People were
Yeah.
really being conscious with the fact that if you support a local business, they're going to also spend that money that they're making in the local community. Where if you go spend your money at Walmart, that money is never going to see your town. I mean, that's never going to go back into your town. It's not going to go back to your local community. If you have an issue, it's not, usually when it's a big corporate company, the owners aren't there, so they don't really care about taking care of you. They're not going to remember your name. All these nice things that you get from, your mom and pop store. I live in Ludlow, Mass, where it's a big Polish and Portuguese community. I'm Portuguese, and a lot of like little Portuguese butcher shops, a lot of Portuguese. We have a Portuguese credit union. We have all these little
Right.
businesses, and it's like everybody knows each other. They know your name. All the little restaurants, you go in there, it's nice to see the same faces and all that stuff. And then they just kind of like demolished all that and like, yeah, I know like small businesses are doing well, but we're just going to make sure that it's going to be impossible for them to survive 2020. And even the ones that did survive, I mean, you have to assume many of them are in debt to make it to 2021.
Man, yeah. Restaurant businesses and bars and stuff, entertainment, especially entertainment. Entertainment, anywhere people gathered, it really put a damper on stuff. And then, and even with us, like we were signed up for so many events. Like we were going to go to the Ozark UFO conference, which was a massive event, right? Conscious Life Expo. I haven't really went to some of the really big events yet because with the Fringe FM, like everything just is happening so fast. It's hard for me to kind of consolidate out everything that's happening so quick. But I think why that's happening is exactly what you're talking about, because you got all these really awesome individual people that want something that they can depend on again, because we can't depend on anything again. When YouTube came out, you could depend on it. You could like talk about anything you wanted to talk about, man, and get as much traffic as you wanted, and it was fair, it was balanced. There wasn't a controlled algorithm of any kind or anything like that, right? Rogan was on. He was just talking about whatever, he hadn't sold out to Spotify and this, like Bitcoin was kind of coming onto the scene as a new thing. And uh, but the censorship now, I never thought it would get to this level, because I'm not a big a parapolitical guy. Usually when people start talking about all of this stuff that's happening, pyramid schemes, manipulation, agenda, the government, etc., I like to take a step back and go, okay, what's really happening here? Because some people they get hyped about this stuff, and other people really care, right? But so you have to like step back and kind of look and say what's really happening. This happened so fast, the censorship and everything that's happening now. I still am trying to catch up with what's going on, because there's so much of it. We're just inundated with it. It's crazy, you know. The thing that happened with Twitter, the thing that constantly keeps happening with Amazon and their data, and even it's like you can't trust anybody anymore. You can't trust anybody, and you don't know when some of these new businesses that come out and they develop another platform and they tell you all this stuff, like you don't know if they're just not behind the scenes building it up waiting to sell it to Spotify or something. You don't know, so you have to hope that, okay, we're going to get behind these people and they're really going to do this thing, right? So that's why kind of like I'm doing the Fringe FM. I'm constantly reaching out trying to build a community, but everybody's just so tired of it. It's hard, right? And so it's really hard, but I think it's worth the fight. I really do. I think it's worth the fight, because I'll go to shortwave radio, man, before we, I mean, before we stop saying what we want to say and doing what we want to do, you know.
Yeah, and that's all we want, right? I mean, it's like just nobody's promoting violence. Nobody is, you look at like I had Mickey Willis, the filmmaker of the Plandemic documentary on my show. We talked for 3 hours just about. And I mean, this guy who is one of the most censored people in like world history, and you chat with him for 2-3 hours. This is a good person who just had a different perspective, really believed
Yeah.
that this was being sold for other agendas, and yet he's being censored. And the thing is, like I always say, you fight bad ideas with good ideas. You don't make it disappear from the face of the earth. In some cases, and not always, but in some cases it actually makes it more sexy, because it's like, okay, why don't you want me to know this? Well, let me look into this, and now I really want to see the Plandemic documentary because you're telling me not to see it. It's no different than like
Yeah.
anybody who's ever had kids, or anybody who's been one. We've all been there, where it's like, your parents tell you not to do something, and immediately it becomes more desirable to do it because I told you not to do it. So it is wild. I mean, I think, if censorship was mild, and it has been for a long time. I've done a lot of shows with James Corbett throughout the years. He's never been fully censored. Now it seems like he's almost getting there. They're flagging him and stuff like that, but he's never been fully censored. But we would talk about how Century of Enslavement, his documentary on the history of money in the Fed, was a documentary that had millions of views, and yet you could type in the exact title and it wouldn't come up on a YouTube search.
Right.
Yeah, and so he's like, okay, obviously something's going on here. And same thing with my show. Like, I would see shows that, and again, I think it's because I said it's not for children, and it's not, I don't put any advertisements on it, and so I'm just like, I don't want to do business with YouTube or whatever. But for whatever reason, they've let me exist. I'm sure they've let me exist because they know that there's a fraction of people who actually listen to my show, um, are on YouTube watching my
Yeah.
show, and really the truth is, like, they're probably not recommending it to anybody. So any people who are watching the show are people who are already aware of the show and going there on purpose because so I'm not getting any new fans on YouTube. But it is getting to the point where one door closes, another one opens. Ben Swan said it when he was on my show. He thinks they overplayed their hand, and he's a big part of this new company, isc.media, or I don't know how you pronounce it. It's like ICE. I don't know if they say, how do they pronounce it, but it's isc.media. It's his new social media video type of platform. So he's, diving deep into this. You have Adam Curry from No Agenda doing the whole podcasting 2.0. I mean, a lot of these things are being fast tracked. Yeah.
Yeah. So what do you do? Right. So what do you do is the thing. It's like when everybody's trying to start that new idea, that new thing. And like I reach out to everybody. I want to me, it would be cool to have like everybody on one platform, kind of like what David Icke's doing, but in a radio and podcast sense. That's more what I'm trying to do with the Fringe. But my heart has always been in radio. That's the whole reason why I built the Fringe FM. But Lighting the Void, the show I do, is really kind of like what you do, is really where I can really express myself. And that's what everybody's wanting to do right now. But of course, I believe in astrology. I'm an astrologer, like amateurish, but there's a lot of Aquarius energy going on right now. And everybody's wanting to express themselves right now. And even those individual people, they still want a community. It's just the problem is the toxic thing that's in this environment right now is, who do you trust? Like, what's the real agenda when it comes to this? And I watch you guys in chat sometimes talk about, well, there's this other system. It's like you're just hungry for somebody to trust in this. There's this other system doing this thing. And well, then they got Amazon. They're backed by Amazon Cloud, so you can't trust them. And you can't. You can't trust them because you don't know what they're going to do, right? So it's almost like we have to build everything from the ground up ourselves in some sort of sense just to get something done. And I don't think it's a bad idea to have different communities either. Even in like commerce, like Ithaca here in upstate New York, they have, it's not blockchain, but they have their own cash. It's called like Ithaca Hours, right? If you go into that community, everybody in that community is kind of behind that exchange. It's one of the only places in the United States like that. And it works really well. And the government's not involved and there's nobody can do anything, but, I don't know. Like, I'm a little concerned about the blockchain stuff too, because anytime something really takes off, it's almost impossible that they don't get involved with it. They're already involved with it. They're already getting their digital currencies up and stuff, right? They're already getting involved with this, and it's just hard to know who to trust. That's the thing, right? Like, we all trust each other, but when it comes to a system, we're all out of options. We're done with systems. It feels like, to trust.
Yeah, I mean, that's why I was hesitant to go to Rockfin for a while because, and I just started kind of a solo show where I kind of just do like 20, 30 minutes of just kind of sharing thoughts that are in my head and things I've been thinking about and experiencing. But I was a little worried because I'm like, well, whatever I do, I'm not putting my baby, my Ripple Effect podcast, as a exclusive show on there because I mean, one, I don't want it behind any paywall, regardless of how it works, because they kind of have like a Netflix thing where you pay $9.99 and you get all the content that's on their platform, and that means my show, Jimmy Dore, Sam Tripoli, Charlie's on there, Grimerica, a bunch of people are on there, but you can choose. Jason Burmis is on there, which he's going to have to be exclusively on there because he was one of those people that really was procrastinating getting into podcasting, or at least putting out audio version of the videos he's putting out. And now he's kind of screwed a little bit because he has a huge following on YouTube, and he keeps all of a sudden getting a lot of strikes and flags and whatnot. And it's just a matter of time before he's probably permanently gone off YouTube. And yet he doesn't have that following on a RSS feed. He doesn't have those subscribers on a RSS feed to keep up with his work. I mean, that's kind of been like the one safe place so far, has been like RSS feeds. Like, subscribe to me on whatever podcast app you listen to podcasts on, and I can upload to my RSS feed. You get it. There's no in between. Nobody seems to get in the way. I mean, there's
Yep.
few examples of issues. I know Grimerica had a similar issue as I did with Del Bigtree, having some issues with iTunes not playing the episode. But besides that, it's been almost flawless. Like, I've had very few issues with my RSS feed, and specifically it's been iTunes anytime I've had issues with it. But yeah, anytime you get somebody like Rockfin, you get all these alternative media people onto your platform, and then there's a little concern of like, okay, I know, like, I got to know Jeremy, right? Jeremy from Odyssey and Library. He was interviewed on Corbett Report. We had him on the Union of the Unwanted episode.
Yeah.
I watched the one where we had all the alternative platforms. His ideology, his beliefs are in free speech, these libertarian ideas. So it's like I feel safer there. Like, I know, like, okay, I can support this guy. This guy, he seems to be motivated not so much by monetary reasons, but it seems like, ideology. And same thing with like Float. Kingsley and Aaron are sweethearts, and they're super nice, and they're just seems like their libertarian ideas are what are really motivating them to create this tech. And but then you get to somebody like Rockfin, and it's like they might, they might not be only motivated by money, but they
you don't know, man. Like, you don't know.
You don't know. And then the other thing too, it's like they're really good at making money. And one thing I've learned throughout the years is I'm really bad at focusing on money, and because I care much more about the work and the art and those type of things. And the people who are really focused on and focus on and good at monetizing, making money, if they're too focused on that, and that's their only concern, like you said,
It's a problem.
yeah, it's a problem, because eventually somebody could offer them some real big money, and they'll be like, yeah, sure, we'll sell the company to you guys. And then now they have control of all this content, or can, change things in a way that we're not happy with. So I like the IPFS type thing. I like the open source thing where just like put my stuff out there anywhere. Like my stuff's on Library and Odyssey. I honestly don't understand the difference between the two very well. I know that Odyssey seems to be the cleaner looking website, and it's the same platform, same technology, same everything. But Library, what I like is people can download my videos on there. So you can go to my channel, anybody can go there and download it. And I recommend people doing that, because
because you get to keep. It's just like an RSS feed. You get to keep the content. Yeah,
exactly. Perfect point. It is like our RSS feed. You can just download it right from your phone. You have a copy of the content. If it disappears or something happens, it's available. It's out there. It's in the world, which to me is really important. And when I connect with people who, I get this feeling of like, okay, this person, like, their moral compass is where mine is, and they care more about the content than they care about anything else. And not to say that, and again, I don't want to bash Rockfin because I don't know, but it seems like this was just a good opportunity for them, and they might appreciate the opportunity of like, okay, you have all these alternative media content creators, these influencers that are being censored. We have a platform, a alternative platform for them. We're good at monetizing. We can offer that, because that's one thing that a lot of content creators are bad at thinking about and focusing on, is monetizing. And we can offer these things, and let's take advantage of this. And they might do that, and nothing bad will happen. But when it seems like that's a their focus or that was their motivation. Like you said, you just don't know. I mean, I like to think that hopefully they now understand, getting all these content creators on their platforms and understanding, hopefully they understand how important all this is, because now with censorship being everywhere, platforms like theirs where people can actually listen to uncensored opinions and perspectives, and sharing just videos and stuff that aren't censored, and you're not self-censoring, because that's the other thing when you're on YouTube. Even if you are still on YouTube, there's many people that I know that are still self-censoring. Oh, I'm just not going to talk about this,
Yeah,
to
why though? Like I'm not even when I had Dean Henderson on, I was like he was like, "Well, they're probably going to take my video down cuz they messed with this guy's bank accounts and all this stuff." I said, "Well, I don't do business with him." Yeah, I mean, this guy's had like some like you were talking about the other guy. He's had a lot of people come after him for just some guy trying to find out the truth, right? But um, I don't, I don't get the majority of my traffic from YouTube at all, right? Like I know a good podcast when I hear you probably get the majority of your traffic from your downloads and RSS feeds and stuff, don't you? Yeah, and that's the one thing that no one can take away from you. And see, that's what you really got to look out for, like people like Spotify and these other folks that come along. And it's cool if they say, "Hey, we'll play your show." And what we do at the Fringe is we have a contract that we send out, but it's for the content owner, right? I don't know if you've seen it. I don't even know if I've sent you one, but it protects you. It don't even really protect us because we want people to feel like you're safe, man. We're not going to do anything to you, you know? And that's how bad it is right now. Seriously. And but yeah, I get the majority of my traffic from the live show on the radio, but mainly the RSS feed. The old school RSS feed is the one thing where I get the majority of my traffic from. I may get a 3 or 4 thousand downloads an episode, but on YouTube, it's like this was a really good show. Why does it only got 230 something views on it? So I don't know. The only reason why I put shows up there is because there are simply just people that won't use anything but YouTube. And I hate to tell people this, but they're the problem, right? Like
they,
they're the problem because you refuse to use anything but YouTube.
and
Like
it's
it's
so many good apps too. I use Podcast Addict. You can subscribe to radio stations. I listen to Fault Lines on Sputnik Radio in the morning sometimes from like 7 to 9 Eastern time, or 7 to 10, or whatever it is. And I have it on my Podcast Addict app. I subscribe to it, and I can listen to it live. So it's like if I'm in the car and I'm like, oh, that's right. Fault Lines Radio is on. Let me see what's going on. Let me listen to them. I can do that, and I can listen to local radio stations if I want to listen to WEI, out of Boston. If I'm traveling and want to listen to sports talk, I can do that. So it's like there's a lot of benefits to these apps. Are awesome. They're very user friendly. There's tons to choose from. I mean, I don't like the idea of like things being exclusive on Spotify. Like I'm sure Joe Rogan will do okay, but I already find myself being annoyed with having, because I don't like Spotify as much. Like I don't like the way the app works, the way it looks.
oh,
And
did you heard about what they did, right? What Spotify's doing now? They're well, next time you look up what Spotify's doing. They're implementing artificial intelligence to monitor your emotions. So they're wanting their whole thing is like, okay, we're going to monitor your emotions, your day-to-day stuff, your voice tones and inflections, and figure out what we're just doing that because we want to figure out what to play for you, right? And Joe Rogan sold out to that company. That's a little scary. There's data mining happening everywhere, but when they're blatantly coming out and saying, well, we have an artificial intelligent algorithm where we're going to try to monitor your emotions and based on that play what we think that you'll like. It's not the same algorithm that they used to have where they would just do it based on the songs and genre. Now they're actually trying to figure out human emotion. That's some heavy data mining, man. That's scary. Like we don't have any privacy like when you're trying to figure out how I feel all the time, right? Like, and then you're building a machine to answer those questions. No. Yeah, that's why everybody's freaking out. That's why everybody doesn't want to sell out to anybody. Nobody wants to. No, and I don't blame them. I don't blame them at all, not one bit. But it does make it tough as a station owner, because I'm old school, man. I like the old school radio model. You know, if you want to promote something, I don't care if it's Tom's Tools down the road or if it's your product or whatever. Like, you should have that little network slot on your radio clock to do that and go on, you know? Like, they don't. The problem is the monsters. It's obvious the monsters they built with all these platforms that are in control of everything. And until we change that, it's not gonna change. It's not going to change. There has to be something else, you know.
Yeah, I'm curious with Joe Rogan taking the deal. He was complaining about, well, one, he didn't go live anymore prior to the deal because he was sick of YouTube taking down his live streams because of a video they played or a song that they played or whatever it may be, and he was just getting sick of that shit. And then he was getting sick of YouTube censoring people who were talking about vitamin D and vitamin C and all these natural remedies. I mean, he's part owner of On It, which is a vitamin supplement company.
Yeah.
And so he's really into health and nutrition, just like I am. And he thought it was ridiculous what YouTube was doing. So I think it was like a perfect time for Spotify to jump in and try to sweet talk him into signing with him, because it's like you could see he was getting fatigued with YouTube, and Spotify comes in and he's like, hey, we're gonna offer video. We're gonna initially they weren't going to offer video. I just heard Rogan talk about this recently. What happened was that he told I don't know if it was he was talking to his attorney or his agent, manager, somebody, and they were discussing how like that viral moment with Elon Musk smoking that joint, how like
Yeah.
that could only happen in video, right? Like you can only have a viral moment if there's a video there. And so they told Spotify, like, hey, if you ever want any viral moments from your platform, like you need video. Like you're not going to only have, and I'm like, I never even thought about that. That kind of makes sense a little bit. But so that was one of the reasons initially they weren't really interested in doing video, and that's kind of what sparked the interest in doing video. And now they're doing video. I mean, competition's good. Like I think YouTube being the only guy in town, the only big company in town, I think somebody else saying like screw you, like we're gonna, but again, like competition, when they're motivated by money and not by morals or content because they're a fan of freedom of speech or the content creators themselves, then they'll do what it takes now to kind of financially get ahead by saying, oh yeah, we support people like Joe Rogan, we're not going to censor him. And then when time comes where it's financially makes sense to censor him, they might also go down that road. So that's the thing that we're all concerned about.
Yeah. Well, yeah, it's a bad move on my part for him, unless he's really thinking about retiring and he just doesn't care anymore. It's a bad move. He should have kept his own, like what you're doing. He should have kept his own RSS feed, spread it out. When it comes to the podcasting side of it, spread it out to as many places as possible. Keep that thing going, right? And just kept it that way. But he the YouTube monster got him. The YouTube monster got him, right? Like, because so many people use it. And how do you convince a community, even a small community sometimes, where it's just like, oh, we don't like this and we don't like that, but don't use it. Don't buy it. Don't use it. If you don't like this, don't buy it. If you don't like Monsanto or whatever, stop buying their products. If you don't like, quit doing it, right? But it's like Charlie said on his show one night. I remember hearing him. It was the funniest thing he said before he even started doing the shows on the Fringe. He was like, it feels like he said, it feels like we're in a realm of conspiracy tweakers. Like, they just, tweakers know how to take everything apart, but they can't put nothing back together, right? So, so it's like everybody goes in and can see the truth and tear it all apart. But what's the solution? And that's kind of like why I respect what you guys are doing, because you guys are looking for solutions. At least you're trying to have solutions, looking for solutions, trying to, a union of the unwanted to me is, even if you do put it on YouTube, it's still a solution. It's people coming together trying to figure this thing out, right? Because they're more, the message and empowering people is more important than status quo or image or money. That's what we got to get past. Is we come from an era where you have to market and funnel that marketing around status quo image. What is my image? That's part of the business, right? But what is my image, and how do I make money? Well, now we're in an era where if you're just authentic, just be yourself, a lot of people are going to like you. The second you stop worrying about that crap is when you'll find your people. It happens every time, right? Like I see it happen too. Like with Midnight Mike, I love that guy. Like who doesn't? He has his own style too, right? Like he has his own thing that he does. Nobody's really doing the way he does it, but he stayed in there consistently and he stayed authentic to who he was. And now he's got a pretty decent audience. Even on YouTube, it's starting to kind of build, right? Um, and I think we're in a society where people are so trapped by their desire for instant gratification or by their fears that the consistency is not there, the sense of wonder is not there, that no one wants to take the journey because everybody's afraid, you know. So well, yeah, like I admire what you're doing and Charlie and what you guys are doing. And I never even put people on the Fringe FM that cursed because I had a radio model, right? But I admired what you guys were doing so much. I was like, I gotta spread this message, you know, like this is important, right? So it's kind of touchy for all of us right now as content creators. It's kind of weird, actually.
Yeah, it's a to me, your station is just another solution, right? I mean, like you said, we're all looking for solutions. The Union of the Unwanted, a big part of it was like, I don't know what the answers are, but I hope if we bring the community together, if we bring people together who are all having these issues, then maybe we can figure something out. We can share ideas. We can, and to me, it's also a part of like the bigger picture that I keep saying is like, if we disagree on specific details or what we believe on this or that, but we all agree on who the enemy is, then we're on the same team
Yeah.
regardless, and to me that's kind of what the Union that wanted became. It's like we'll bring all these people in, they might disagree. We had people on our Q people who absolutely think Q's the most ridiculous thing ever. We've had people from, but it's like, oh, we're all fighting for the same things. So we're all fighting for the right to share those different ideas. Though even if we disagree, at least give us a platform where we can disagree and we can share our different perspectives. So, it really did become a community, and a very important one, because like I said, like when we help each other, and that's the beautiful thing about the podcast world, is that for the most part, people are pretty open to helping each other out. People are pretty open to, I've throughout the years, I keep telling people, like, start a podcast. I'm like, can never be enough people out there seeking for
Right.
truth and spreading interesting conversations and information. And if you need any help, hit me up. And people would hit me up, and I would be like, okay, this is how I did it. I'm not saying this is the best way of doing it, but I'm just saying, okay, this is what I did. This will at least get you started. And now a lot of podcasters that I talked to and was kind of sparking interest in starting one are doing it. And I know that the average podcast is like seven episodes or something like that, but
Yeah,
hopefully,
it fades out after 7. Yeah.
yeah.
So if you get to like 50 episodes, so I looked up these statistics for business reasons. There's 150,000 new podcasters a month.
Wow.
A month, right? 80% of those people, roughly 80% of those people fade out. So you can put yourself in the top 20% just by being consistent, just keep going, right? Until you figure it out. Most people don't do that. Like, and I get that. Like, you don't seem that way, but it's natural for me you don't seem the way that I'm talking about these faders, right? That fade out. It's natural for me to just keep going and not care what people think and all this other stuff. But it maybe have something to do with I'm raised. Some people are naturally that way. And then there's other people that are so afraid of messing up or doing things wrong or what people are going to think. And there's no like less than or greater than when it's just those type of people fade out. When I think right now, especially with this new energy that's coming, everybody should express themselves, even if you do fade out after 7, right? Try it. Just try it. Try to express yourself. You'll be surprised how many people actually want to hear what you have to say or might agree with you, might even start gathering around to listen. I mean, that's how it starts, and that's
He-
good.
like
It's
you
just we got to get solutions.
Well, and like you said, like, be yourself, just be honest. I mean, when I started my podcast, I could foresee the popularity of podcasts growing because I'm like, the same way I found podcasts intriguing because it was one of the few places where I could listen to actual honest discussions with ideas and challenging ideas and different perspectives, and it didn't seem like they were trying to sell me any agenda, and it didn't seem fake. Like you said, just be sincere. People, I mean, I've done, over 300 episodes. I'm sure you have many hours of talking also recorded. And when people listen to us talk for that long, you can only be fake for so long. Like, who you really
Yeah.
are is going to come out eventually. You
Right.
can only bullshit for so long. So it's like you talk about over 300 episodes, each episode on average the hour, hour and a half, some are 2-3 hours. So it's like, that's a lot of discussions. And it's like, if you're fake, people are going to pick up on it. But if you're honest and sincere, and people are, they can get a sense of that, like, this is just a person just I'm on this journey with them. They're just trying to explore the world, explore ideas, try to understand themselves and the world around them, and I'm on this journey with them. People appreciate that. I mean, a lot of people give a shit about Joe Rogan, while Joe Rogan could care less about what anybody else thought of him. I mean,
Yeah.
he was
Right.
told in the beginning to 3 hours was the most ridiculous idea ever. He was told that, like, nobody's gonna listen to fucking podcast for 3 hours. He's the only person doing, like, that type of format. Probably not the only, but one of the few that were doing these super long form conversations, and you're like, nobody's gonna listen for that long. And he just kept doing it and doing it. And what people, I think, enjoyed was the fact that he seemed like a honest, curious person who was exploring ideas and didn't seem like he had a agenda that he was pushing on you. When everywhere else, if you're watching TV, if you're on YouTube, or if you're searching news articles or whatever, like, everybody seemed to have a agenda or perspective that they were trying to force feed you. And so I that's the thing about podcasts. It sounded like you were a part of the conversations we enjoy. Like, it sounds like, I remember when I started my show with my co-hosts, and I remember telling my buddy Dave, I'm like, we're gonna talk and we're gonna record it. That's it. And he's like, that sounds so stupid, and he's like,
Yeah, it kind of does if you think about it. For
yeah,
like, what? Like,
yeah.
why would anybody care?
But
But
I put in perspective, like,
yeah,
okay, when you go out with your friends, Joe, right? And you're out and you're having a drink, and you're in some deep conversations, and it gets serious at times, and it gets kind of sillier at times, and next thing you know, it's like it's 3 hours later, and you're like, holy shit, we've been at this bar drinking and talking for a long time. What made that enjoyable? It was just conversation. So all you're doing in many cases, at least with like my podcast and similar podcasts, is you're just trying to record those, capture them, create those conversations, record them, and share them. And the same way that I enjoy having them and being a part of them, you hope that the listener also enjoys those. So, I mean, I think everybody enjoys those type of honest discussions and conversations. And really, like, when you put it in that, when you really think about it in that regard, like, it seems like, of course, it makes sense that it's popular. Like, everybody enjoys having those deep conversations with their friends. The problem was there wasn't anywhere where you could find that, and then podcasts came and really, it gave you those long form conversations where it's like, okay, we're talking about this, and then 20 minutes later, it's like it led here, and then it led over here, and then the conversation went over there and over here, and it's like you never know where the conversation is going to go. And that's what makes it fun and interesting. Like, I've listened to shows, Rogan, for example, where it's somebody, and even with my show, where, like, we end up going completely off the rails, where, like, we're not talking about any of the things that this person is supposed to be an expert in, but it's what made it fun. It's like nobody expected the conversation to go here, and you're learning something new about this person and a perspective that he's never shared before, or a personal story he's never shared before. So
you
that,
have the same kind of style that I do too, in that sense. Like, people ask me all the time on Lighting the Void, I do a show like 5 nights a week, right? And they say, well, who's coming on your show? And I'm like, I'll have to check, right? Like, you don't know? Because I've been doing it so long. I'm like, no, I'll go check my email. And like, you don't know who your guest is? I haven't checked my email today because I got a producer that brings the guests on, right? And like, so what are you going to ask them? I'm like, I don't know, right? And like, how do you do that? I just want to have a deep conversation with somebody. That's it. That's it. Like, I'll look up like what they do, who they are. Like, oh, that's cool. That's really interesting. figure out a couple of questions that I'm really want to know about that subject, and just and go, and it's that easy. Even the calls are live. I don't screen them. I have technical problems that happen all the time, so like it's still, there's an intimacy to it. But also I think another thing that people relate to is like, you know, um, when people get vulnerable, every now and then there's some vulnerability that happens during podcasts too. When people really open up and say stuff that maybe they were afraid to say to their families growing up or whatever, or maybe they've never talked about something, or maybe that there's something that they think they're going to get judged for, and they say it and everybody's like, yeah, man, I feel the same way, and it's like life changing. And every one of those little moments is a lot of reasons why people stick into those conversations too, because they start to feel like they can relate, like they're not alone. And that's why I fell in love with radio too, because of the intimacy and the vulnerability of it sometimes, and also just the crazy stories that people would tell and experiences. And you're sitting back there wondering, man, I wonder, like, if this person's really telling the truth. Like, did they really get abducted by an alien and get probed or whatever and all this other stuff? And then somebody would call in and start asking the questions that I was thinking about. And it was like heroin for me, man. I was addicted to it, and I think that's why the beauty of podcasting when it came along is like, now you have that, but you can just download and listen to it at your own leisure. And that, it was so simple, right? It was so simple. We could say anything and do anything. It was beautiful. But these freaking social media giants came around and just ruined it all. I mean, they didn't ruin everything. It's not ruined yet. It's stained because they started controlling everything. And I think we're working it out. I think there's some alchemy going on here, man, where we're working it out. We'll figure it out. The energy will go, and we'll figure something out for sure. I know I'm going to with the Fringe. That's all I'm going to try to do. That's all I'm going to try to do. Is even big name people, I've talked to them. I said, why don't we all just come over here, get on the Fringe? I'll even start like a membership thing where everybody can split up the support, whatever. Let's just do something, anything, and create something, right? And some people would go for it. I drove to Portland. I went and like talked to Clyde Lewis. I went all over the place, man, trying to do this stuff. And I think it's cool. It's fun. It's like a big adventure, man. I feel like Frodo Baggins on a freaking journey. You know what I'm saying? Trying to get this stuff done.
Well, it's funny because you're talking about the similarities of podcasting and radio, and for people who had no idea what a podcast was, that's how I would describe it. I'm like, oh, it's radio on demand. I'm like, it's basically like a radio show, only you can download it or stream it anytime you want. So it's like on demand, like, equivalent to like a cable. So that's basically what it is. But do you feel like there's some benefits in regards to, like, you know uh people always think of radio like, okay, it's full of commercials, it's short segments, so the conversation doesn't become as intimate because you're constantly going in and out of segments or whatever. Do you see that as a pro or con of radio? Do you enjoy that part of it?
Well, I try to blend both styles, but when it comes to like radio, well, I liked what Art Bell did, and that's what I'm trying to do. Is like, I don't want 9 segments in an hour. I don't want 50 minutes of commercials, and then have a guest say something like, "Well, I had this out of body experience," and then the host is so like inundated and focused on the program and the radio clock that he's like, yeah, but does the moon have a brain? Like, he's not even listening to the guest, what they're talking about, right? And there's no intimacy there at all. I think that, I don't even know if intimacy is the right word. It's a different kind of intimacy that people share in their minds. Um, but man, I think it just depends. Like, when I started out, I started podcasting in 2015, and I didn't do any commercials. I just did an intro and started talking, and would just talk, and it was fun, right? But what I found myself doing was listening to the radio later, because there was something about it to me. It was like, oh, that person's live right now there. Like, it just felt more like anything could happen, you know?
Isn't
So it was in the moment. Do I?
Isn't it weird how that works? Like, just because it's I was talking about listening to fault lines, And same thing. Like it's sometimes I'm like, oh, I'm like, I don't love this show. I like it. I don't love it, but it's live. So let me listen to it. Like I'm attracted to
Yeah.
it just because it's live. YouTubers, I mean, you look at all these YouTubers that have these huge followings. What do they all do? They all live stream. They all live stream. All of them do live streams. There's something about people will connect. So what I started doing on YouTube was like a little trick was like you can do a live premiere. So I'll upload the video, then I'll just be like, okay, live premiere once it's ready, and then next thing you know, everybody's like premiering now, so people
Yeah.
like
It's
attract.
recorded but live,
Yeah,
right? Yeah.
so it's like, and
Yeah.
but that little I mean, I don't know, it's kind of like trickery. Like you think that like something is going to happen when it's not, but just that for some reason, just because, like you said, because it's live, you're like, okay, if something historic happens, like somebody slips or says something they shouldn't, I heard it, and they can't edit it out because I heard it.
Yeah, like you
You
can't. And the lying stuff too, like you're talking about. Like I read the book, The Art of Talk Radio by Art Bell is a great book. And he would say exactly what you just said. He's like, you cannot lie and bullshit ever, because these people are constantly listening to you. And there's some people out there that are just waiting. They're waiting for you to mess up, man. Like they're just waiting for you to mess up so they can get you, you know? But to your earlier question, I like the live thing maybe for an emotional reason. I haven't figured that out yet. But I also like the podcasting thing too, because uh, like this conversation we're having, or maybe one of Charlie's shows or something, like, oh man, they talked to that person. I didn't get to hear it now, but I can hear it at my leisure when I get time to. I can hear it when I want to. So I think it's important to do both. Although, man, if you do both like the way I do it, it takes up so much energy, man. Like I'm always like 4 or 5 shows behind on my archives trying to catch up to them. I'm trying to get people to help with me. I'm trying to get people to help with the station. And I just want to focus on like the just the content, just the fun of it, like, and we do live in an era now where you can use things like Patreon and all this other stuff. But even Patreon, it's like the more I finally got that thing going and got to a decent level with it, and the more money I make, the more they take, you know. Why are people creating platforms where they just take chunks of my money? I get that they have to make money, but there has to be a way where we can all do this, where it's just totally fair, and there's not some guy behind the curtain, running everything, because that's what Patreon feels like to me. They could kick me off that thing anytime they want. So now I'm trying to figure out how to get over to the website, but the I'm a radio lover, man. I'm like Mike. You could talk to Mike; he'd probably tell you the same thing. I just like radio. It's exciting to me for some reason.
I do like the live aspect of it. I like the calling in aspect of it. I don't know if I'd ever do it, but I mean, it's fascinating
You'd be
because
good at it.
I love talking to people, and I would love to just like people give me, I just started doing this thing just a couple months ago called Ricky Rants with Fans, and I'm on Patreon. Even though I've lost a couple of Patreon supporters, they wrote me messages saying,
Oh,
"Hey,
you'll have that. Yeah.
well, the reason is because of what you're talking about, the censorship. People are saying that, Ryan from Last American Vagabond is being censored on Patreon, so now they're going to leave Patreon, or this person they like is being censored on Patreon, so they're going to leave Patreon. So it's getting to the point where like people just they want to support the show, but they don't want to do it on Patreon. Like I've had people email me like, "Hey, how do I
Yep.
support the show, without using Patreon?" And I'm like, "Listen, I don't put content on Patreon, so maybe that's the reason. I just kind of give people updates." But I started doing these shows where it's like Ricky Rants with Fans, and to give people another perk to join Patreon and support the show financially. I'm like, okay, once a month I'll do a show where I give you guys a Zoom link. I'll give you the time and date. Show up, we'll talk, and then I'll release it as an episode, and it'll be just for me and my Patreon supporters. And it kind of reminded me of like the call-in thing, where like I don't know who the fuck's calling in. Like I don't know
Yeah.
who's going to jump in. I don't know if anybody's going to jump in. I don't know what they're going to ask. I'm hoping it's not somebody angry. If they're a Patreon supporter and they have the Zoom link, I'm hoping it's because they like the show and they don't dislike the show. But you never know. But yeah, and I kind of like that aspect of it. And I've heard you do it. I've heard Mike do it, and just the randomness of like you never know what they're gonna say or what they're gonna bring up or what's on their mind. It's interesting, the fault lines on Sputnik Radio. Like that's one of my favorite parts of the show is that they have some listeners that listen to the show every morning that are more conspiratorial than the hosts. So they'll bring up shit that it's like more conspiratorial that they won't really talk about on the radio. And I'm like, oh, I like the caller part of the show. It's like, you might get one of these listeners that actually say, hey fuckers, like, stop pretending this vaccine agenda doesn't exist, because I like the show, but I definitely disagree with them in many aspects of what's going on in the world right now. But yeah, so it is fun. And like you said, I think it might be as simple as like, you just don't know what the fuck's going to happen. It's like watching live sports, right? It's like if you already know the score or the final score, it's like, oh, I could watch the game, but I already know what the fuck happened, where when you watch it live, you're like, if something historic happens or something unusual happens or something cool happens, I'm experiencing it right now, right when it happens. And there's
Yeah.
a connection, I don't know if it's subconscious, if it's energy or what it is, but you feel like you're a part of this moment that's happening where if and there is something about like experiencing things together too, that whole part of it where it's just like you're
That's the good word, together. It's a together thing. Yeah. Yeah, man. Like, but I'll tell you, like, you don't know what's going to happen. I remember one night I did a radio show and I had this guy named Kurt on. He used to come on. He was like he had like the greatest radio voice ever, but he was a lush. He just drank like crazy, you know. And I was like, listen, Kurt, I'll drink with you one night just to do it. He was so happy. So we started like trying to drink and see who would get smashed first. And usually I'm talking about consciousness, the occult, empowering people, this kind of stuff, right? But that night I just kind of wanted to kick back. Well, what happened that night too is my grandmother, who lived across the road, called me on the phone and said that someone was trying to break in her house. So I had to leave Kurt, who was buzzing there, pretty much to do the radio show while I'm walking around the house with a, like a revolver trying to find this person that's trying to break into my grandmother's house. And I called in to try to, talk to Kurt while it was happening. And people were just kind of like flipping out. They couldn't believe that this was going on. Like the other night you were talking to Jordan Maxwell. Now, what are you doing? It's just, I don't know. It's crazy. It's fun like that sometimes, for
That's
sure.
why I don't edit anything either. When I do my show, I throw an intro. If I edit anything, it's like if for some reason the connection was lost and I need to like kind of paste it together or whatnot, so stuff like that. But yeah, I like the conversation flowing. If I sound like an idiot, I let people hear me sound like an idiot, and it's what makes me human. I always tell people I'm like, I'm an idiot. I'm just like a conduit for interesting people and interesting things, and so it puts it kind of out there. I mean, even like there's been times in the past where I've messed up. I've made mistakes on stuff and people will correct me and I'm like, yeah. I'm like, I'll look into it. My bad. And people are pretty cool with that type of stuff. If you're just honest and even if there's flaws, if you mess up on a statistic or whatever, or a quote, people are, they're usually pretty cool with that. They understand that, and it's different too. Cause I feel like how you come off has a big part to do with it. It's like if my goal was to sound smart all the time and sound intelligent,
Yeah.
sound like the smartest guy in the room, then people are like, listen, fuck this motherfucker who's always this arrogant ass who thinks that he's so smart. When he fucks up, I'm gonna make sure I highlight it and I let him know that he's an idiot and he messed up. So I think arrogance and cockiness will rub people the wrong way. And then because for the most part, I've had nothing but like positive, for the most part, positive feedback. Every once in a while, but I don't spend any time, paying attention to that stuff. I tell podcasters, and I'm sure in radio it's the same thing. I'm like, just do what you love, be honest, and don't pay attention to how many downloads you have. I remember back in the day, I used to be obsessed with like analytics. I'm like, oh, how many shows do I have to put out to get these many downloads again, or what type of guest do I have brought me this many downloads or whatever? And I'm like, what the fuck do I care? I'm like,
It
once,
doesn't matter, man. If you just keep doing it and keep expressing yourself, it'll come.
yeah.
It'll happen.
And if you keep just doing that, it doesn't feel like work either. You're still enjoying it. Like if you get obsessed with those things, then eventually it's going to feel like a job that you don't like. It's going to feel like work, and it's not going to feel like a passion project. And to me, that's a big thing with me. It's like that's why I don't put advertising or anything. I'm like I enjoy doing.
Really?
Yeah, I
Is
mean,
that one of the reasons why? Because I talk to a lot of people like this. I'm like, man, I got this cool sponsor trying to, they want to find a cool show to I don't know, promote their skateboards to, and it would fit with your show, right? And I always get that back. Like they're like, I don't know, right? Like, are they? Maybe you're right. Maybe they're afraid they're going to lose like that passion, or it's going to turn into a job or something like that. And I could see that too, because you have to stop for a little bit and promote somebody's skill. But I always tell everybody, I'm like, man, if you're not into this stuff, like find something that you're really into. Not even like, well, I'm kind of into it, but like find something that you're really into. I've had the same sponsor forever, Ronnie from Get the Tea, because that dude changed my life. I talk to that dude on the phone all the time. He's a UFO guy. Like he's like, this stuff does change your life, right? It helped change mine. But I don't think I could do a McDonald's ad, right? And then there's even cooler stuff too that you can promote or come up with your own stuff. So maybe you're onto something there. Like maybe people should just figure out how to either come up with their own thing that's really cool, whether it's a product, a service, a subscription, or whatever, or find somebody else's thing that you're really into and that you want to support. Because if you're passionate about it, other people are going to be, and it won't feel like a job. Because the downside to the radio world is there's like especially when you start syndicating and getting bigger and stuff like that, there's a sales aspect to it. Part of you becomes a salesman, right? You don't like, I'm afraid of that too, honestly, to be honest with you. I don't want to be that, right? But uh so what I do is on the Patreon is like, I say, okay, well, we're going to do the astral journal where we're all trying to like go out of body and meet up and stuff like that. And then I'll do some tarot stuff and some astrology stuff. And then people will pay for that. Like they'll get involved with that. And it's all like, we're kind of supporting each other. But, um, I guess I do have a fear that there's just going to be so many individual things happening that there's not going to be any networking anymore. And I am starting to hear from a lot of listeners too that they're like, man, I just don't have $10 for everybody. I love all these shows, but I don't have $10 a month for everybody, you know? And it's like, so they have to pick, right? And it's like, I gotta come up with something for the Fringe FM that's just going to solve everybody's answer. I haven't figured it out yet, but I've meditated on it. Just fix everything for everybody, right? That's what the Fringe FM should be.
well, Rockfin, that whole idea of like a alternative media Netflix where you pay $9.99 and then you get everybody's content. That's something that I think would work too for the Fringe. Like this idea of like, okay, you pay one fee and that way you support everybody who's on this platform. And so, I think that's something people would be down with and cool with. I want to get into we've obviously casual conversation takes you everywhere, but how did you, because I'm curious too myself, how did you come up with this idea of Fringe FM? How did you, what made you want to start it? And some of these questions you actually already kind of scratched the surface about, but uh like what made you want to do like a because the Fringe FM, if I'm not mistaken, it exists basically as like a internet radio station. It's not like a domestic radio station where you actually.
No, but it will be soon enough.
Oh,
But yeah, but like we have, it's internet radio is even harder to compete with, and because there's so many people starting internet stations and stuff. But yeah, that's what it started out as. Because I did the first podcast I ever did was called White Trash Guru. I thought it was hilarious, but it didn't go over very well, right? And then so I had a like an out of body experience, like a legitimate out of body experience. I did not believe in this, man. I thought it was the biggest horse shit on the face of the earth, but I thought it was cool. So I got really obsessed with that, the out of body experience thing and Robert Monroe. And I saw myself sleeping, and that was it for me. I started listening to Art Bell and everything. And then I got to doing podcasts on my own. And when you start doing podcasts on your own, you start feeling like you're talking to yourself because you're not getting any downloads or anything, right? It's like, man, I'm just talking to myself. No one really paying attention or whatever. And then as I started getting downloads, I started listening to all kinds of podcasts. And then I talked to this guy named Dave Cruz, and I said, I'm thinking about like starting a network, right? And just I just want to talk to people, because now as a podcaster, you're feeling alone, you know? And I don't know if, I don't know if I lost you there. Are you still there? Yeah, you're there. Sorry, it just glitched for a minute.
Yeah, yeah.
And that's how it started. So we just came up with the Fringe FM, and I went through so many different people. Like, yeah, I want to get involved. Yeah, I want to get involved. I never thought it was going to blow up to anything big or anything like that. I was just going to make like a little internet station with some dudes that just really talked about some heavy stuff, from conspiracy to mystery to paranormal to science to quantum physics. I just wanted to start pulling all these shows in where people were really trying to get the truth about everything. And like, it's, even to this day, I would say 4 years later, it's become overwhelming, because we we're like one of the most listened to stations on TalkStream Live for that stuff, and in other places too. And now there's more people downloading the app, and then I'm seeing all these shows like you, and like I talked to Tony Merkel the other night. I'm gonna probably put him on the network, and it's just, I'm trying to study all these books about how to run a radio station. I'm just being honest with people. Like, I'm not. I didn't go to broadcasting school. Like, a lot of stuff is happening really fast for the network, and I think it's because there's a hunger for what you and I talked about for this whole time, right? There's a hunger for something new, something that that people can trust too, and that people just want to be a part of something bigger, man. They want to be a part of something bigger that matters, and something that they can trust. And I'm trying to be that. As far as the network goes, we're trying to be that. It's just hard because there's so much stuff happening at once. You know, it's really hard. That's about as honest as I can be at it. That's how it got started. It wasn't meant to be anything big, really. It just turned out that way, kind of.
Yeah, and if people haven't downloaded the app yet, please do. But something you were saying before that is so true. If you can find something you're really passionate about, then you won't feel like you're marketing it. You won't get that dirty like salesman feeling. You'll just feel like I'm just talking about something I like, and that's something we all do naturally anyways. Like people know who've been listening to the show for a while, then I'm big into ketogenic diet. I've had, tons of people to talk about it on, like Dr. Dominic D'Agostino and Jim Abrams, who did the Naked Gun movies and Airplane. He came on because he has a foundation called the Charlie Foundation to talk about it. Dr. Thomas Seyfried, so many different people to talk about it. And sometimes I feel like I'm trying to get people to join my cult, like my keto cult, because it's like, but it's not because I'm promoting it in regards to like trying to sell anybody, and I have nothing to sell them. The only thing I'm trying to do is I have some information that I think could be useful and could help improve their lives in regards to joint pain, cognitive function, whatever it is, disease fighting ability of fasting or removing or carbs and glucose from your diet. So I can talk about this shit all day
You
because
know, I want to talk about that with you, actually, because I've thought about doing that. This is probably not going to entertain people, but I want to get back. I'm almost 40, and I'm like, this is my last chance to get in shape again,
my,
right? This is what I'm thinking.
my
Like,
wife just turned 40. She turned 40 the 25th.
yeah. So I'll be 39 in a few weeks, right? And I'm thinking like, I gotta, I gotta get in, like, I want to get in the best shape I've ever been in my life and keep that. And I've been looking at this stuff like keto, alternative fasting. Everybody swears by this stuff. The one thing that works I know keto works. I know it does, but there's people that say it's dangerous too. And I don't know why they would say it was dangerous, because I've done it a few times. The only thing that really was hard for me, especially when you like sweets and you're eating the crap that you're not supposed to eat, is that first like detox that your body does to start getting all that stuff. You just feel like uh,
They call it
crap for a little while.
flu. Yeah, they call it the keto flu. I mean, so when people, I mean, there's a lot of, and this goes down to other rabbit holes of conspiracies of the sugar industry, the food industry. I mean, there's a reason why they've been force feeding us cheap vegetable oils, the cholesterol myth. I mean, this idea that like cholesterol is this harmful thing for you, and if it's at this level, you should take this drug that's harmful for you to try to bring it down. I mean, the levels that of cholesterol that they're giving drugs for is just so low and so insignificant, that nobody's going to die from a heart attack based on cholesterol. Not just that, there's been a lot of good researchers, Dr. What's her name? Patrick, whatever, the female, she's actually on the Rogan's podcast a lot. I'm having a brain fart, I can't remember her name, but so many, and you hear tons of people in the carnivore diet world, keto diet world, Rob Wolf, all these really interesting people, Mark Sisson, all telling people about the cholesterol myth. I mean, this idea that like it is simple as your cholesterol levels are high, you're going to have a heart attack. It's bullshit. And the reason why this is important and why I'm bringing it up, because that's one of the most common questions is like, hey, if I eat all this fatty stuff, is my cholesterol going to go up? Yeah. And that's okay, because cholesterol is not going to give you a heart attack. Like it's, it's
I thought isn't it bad cholesterol, like LDL, like the LDL level of cholesterol when it just sits in your arteries because you're not doing normal stuff like exercise and things like that, you know?
there's some conflicting opinions. There's actually a amazing journalist, I can't remember her name now, that she actually uh basically focused tons of her research on how the pharmaceutical companies were lowering what they were considering a healthy cholesterol number for the purpose of trying to get people on more pills. And it makes sense, right? So it's like if you're a corporation, you're like, how do we get quarterly gains? And somebody in the office meeting is like, you know what, all we got to do is lower that cholesterol number, that average cholesterol, or that threshold, I should say, for the what a healthy cholesterol level is, just a couple digits, and we can, that sparks a whole domino effect of doctors writing more prescriptions, which means more profits and all this stuff. It makes, it is a simple solution to make more money. So there's all these incentives in scaring us about cholesterol. I mean, that's why for the longest time it was like, you can't believe it's not butter type of bullshit and that type of thing. And when now we're like, oh, butter is not bad for you. Now it's like that soybean oil and that cheap vegetable oil is actually harmful for you. And then the whole thing of like cholesterol being, and the thing is, there's a great documentary called Sugar Coated that goes into like the whole conspiracy of how the sugar industry demonize fats and cholesterol because they want to get the attention off them.
I believe it, man. I mean, that they have to create the demand for their products. It's that simple, and we all know what they'll do. You ever watch those court cases of some of the pharmaceutical companies? I don't know if it was Pfizer or I forget which one it was. They're getting sued all the time, right? All the time, and they get sued for everything. And I was watching this court case. Like I'm having a brain fart too, so I can't remember the young guy he's the young one, the youngest guy that runs pharmaceuticals. I hope you guys know who I'm talking about. I don't know if it's Pfizer or the other one,
Is that the
but
guy,
he's sitting.
Pharma Bro?
Yeah, I think so. Right, he's sitting in the courtroom, and they are just smashing this dude, like literally, like hitting him with the most evil stuff and proving it, And he's just leaning back, smiling, grinning, because it's not going to affect him. Like, it's not going to affect him. Like, what are you going to do to me? Right? Like, you're going to give me a fine or something? You're going to make me pay $10 million? I'll pay the fine and go back and make profit off of it because I don't have to file bankruptcy, or vice versa. Like, you can't do anything to them people unless you can imprison them. And he's just smiling. And they're like, do you know that this is causing cancer? Like, this didn't go through the right testing, and this is really like hurting people. I forget everything they said, but I was so pissed off. That's why my brain's not working right, because I was so pissed off watching him smile. And these are like family members and stuff. My dad takes that kind of medicine too. I just forget I forget what it was. I think it was a diabetes medicine. Actually, I don't think it was cholesterol, but
They had issues with in the 90s. I think you can still see it on YouTube. I remember back in the day, you could have Prozac, people in court talking about how suicidal they were when they were on Prozac, which was a antidepressant. So how fucked up is the pharmaceutical industry that they're giving you a drug that one of the side effects is suicidal thoughts and potential suicide, and it's to help you with depression. And the crazy thing, and this goes into the whole DSM and all these psychological issues, and that they give you pills for these antidepressants, these anti-anxiety. I mean, you're a guinea pig, because the truth is, when they use terms like chemical imbalance, it's nonsense. They never test you for any chemical. They don't test to see how imbalanced the chemical is. They don't know if they just use that term because it sounds scientific, but the truth is they give you basically a verbal questionnaire like, hey, do you feel like this? Do you feel like that? Okay, here, try this pill. Oh, that didn't work. Okay, try this pill. Try that pill. So it's so unscientific. It's based on nonsense. The placebo effect is very strong. So sometimes maybe some people feel better because of that. I mean, I talk about this guy a lot. He wrote the book. What was his name? Dr. Sorno. He wrote the book Mind Over Back Pain, about how he was like one of the leading surgeons in the U.S. back surgeons, and he was finding some just weirdness with why some people had really fucked up backs and had very little pain, and other people had not so messed up backs and high pain. And he's like, "What the fuck's going on here?" And he came to the conclusion that it wasn't the actual physical back that was
It
causing
was psychosomatic, wasn't it?
exactly.
Yeah.
It was mentally, your brain was finding some weak spot or somewhere where pain already existed and making it worse because of the mind body connection. I mean, people can't, they take that for granted. Same thing with the whole gut thing. Like, now people are understanding, when we've been saying for a long time, like, hey, I got a gut feeling. That's actually because there is this brain gut connection, or in some cases some people say that the gut could be the second brain. So there's all these connections.
There's no doubt about that.
Yeah.
There's no doubt about that, because I've experienced that. Because like I'm a old school, like redneck kind of guy, man. So I've had good health in my life and been super in shape, and I've had the worst kind of health and treated myself like crap. And I can tell you for a fact, I've tried a lot of many things, which I know isn't healthy to yo-yo like that, right? I get that, so I'm not doing that anymore. But like, when you start fixing your gut, I can tell people personally, when you start doing that, if you're taking probiotics, if you clean yourself out, stuff like that, you you feel different. Like, even when I do the first time I did the tea thing, uh the the initial cleanse, it kind of sucked. I'm not gonna lie to you, it sucked. But 2 weeks after that, I swear to God on everything, man, like, I felt like I didn't even feel like the same person. I felt way different, like way different, right? And I didn't even totally get off sugar yet. So I can only imagine what that's like. Like, there's so much crap inside of us that that's why I was asking you about that, because I thought about doing the fasting, and then I thought about doing the keto, because I've done the keto thing too, you know. It's just finding something. You have to change your lifestyle, man. You got to exercise every day. You got to, like, watch what the hell you're feeding yourself. Half the stuff at the stores, especially like the dollar store, Walmart, you shouldn't even be grocery shopping at these places to begin with, right? But when you finally find a store, you still got to look, because they're putting tons of chemicals and crap inside you all the time. I didn't grow up caring about that stuff. My family didn't care about those things, right? I started caring about it when I started losing organs. You know how many people, like, get their gallbladders removed? You know how many people get their gallbladders removed? It's insane. It's in like the billions, I would think, or probably multi-millions. Even I had a surgeon tell me that. Um, he said it's almost like a conveyor belt of people. They're constantly just getting their gallbladders removed. The thing that has, like, I know it's disgusting to talk about, man, but it's the organ that gives you an intensified, dense version of bile, so that your body can handle, just in case you put something that needs help being broke down. And so many people have just trashed that. And they're like, oh, and they talk about it in the hospitals. If that's no big deal, you can live without it, right? It's like, how's that not a big deal? First it's the appendix, then the gallbladder, and then what? Like, we need these organs, you know? So that's when I kind of started waking up to all that, man. Like, what's really going on? And Ryan Gable kind of helped me learn some of this stuff too. So, but do you still do the keto thing now? Like,
I've been doing it for, I mean, I'd say as
you live it, right? Basically.
I've been doing it for. I'll get out of it from time to time. Like, like I said, my wife just turned 40. We went to Florida to visit some of her family. Well, we left China, aka Massachusetts, and went to America, and Florida, where you could
Yeah.
actually live free. And then we were down there, and we went out to eat for her 40th birthday, and we had a big group of us. And I'm like, you know what, fuck it, I'm gonna have some cheesecake, I'm gonna have some cognac, I'm gonna have some some brandy. I don't know what it is about cognac and sweets, but
It's
you get
good. Yeah.
it's so good. And you have like espresso, I'm like traditional Portuguese where I have a little espresso, then I have my little cognac and I have my dessert. I'm in heaven, and but I do it from time to time. I call it a reward day. Like I earned it. I went to the gym. I've been eating clean. But the thing is when you eat clean for long periods of time, it's really easy to get back, or at least for me, it's really easy for me to get back into it because I feel like shit when I don't eat clean. Like it sits in my stomach. I feel sluggish. And
You immediately tell the difference. Yeah. Cause your body's used to not putting all that shit and sugar into it. Yeah.
yeah, well, that's
Right.
carnivore. I've had Dr. Sean Baker on, who's like the one of the faces of the carnivore diet, and I'm a big believer of what. And I did it for 3 weeks. Like I did it for 2 weeks. I was going to do it for 2 weeks to experiment with it before the podcast with Dr. Sean Baker. And then I had one day off, and one day off just meant I did keto instead of carnivore. And then I'm like, you know what? I really like the way I'm feeling. I'm like, let me give it another week. So then I did it. I did it another week, and I think
Started feeling even better after that too.
yeah, I mean, yeah, the
Yeah.
carnivore diets. Well, the thing is about the carnivore diet, it's like the process of elimination. So, like the reason why it works, I don't think it's all. And I believe me, 90% of what I eat is meat. Like I'll have, steak, pork, ribs, whatever it is. Like it's that with a little bit of sauce. I use a lot of Primal Kitchen stuff because they have all healthy sauces, and I've been a fan of Mark Sisson for a long time, so I really have faith in his products and his companies. And but it's basically meat. It's like steak with some eggs on it, or steak with some bacon on it, or steak with some shrimp on it. It's a lot of steak, and I just keep it, and then a glass of wine. Like that's my little vice. I'll have a glass of wine. Try to buy some not expensive wine, because when you're drinking it every night, you can't really afford to drink
You got to find a decent wine that you can afford. Yeah.
the nice thing about being Portuguese is I know the secret of wines is Portuguese wine. Like Portuguese wine is not a very sought out type of wine because most people don't know what it tastes like. They don't know if it's good or bad. So it's not expensive. So you can get a really good bottle of Portuguese wine from like $9 to like $15. Like $15 is like I'd start saying a little more expensive Portuguese wine. It's crazy. Like you think $15 for a bottle of wine, it's
Yeah.
not.
That's not bad.
No, not at all. So like, I'll buy wines from 10 to 50, and you can buy organic wines now that have less sulfates or no sulfates, made with organic grapes. So your hangover and the sugar content is much lower. A lot of the imported wines from other countries, they don't use as many sulfates and as many chemicals to keep consistent taste and smell and aroma like the American wines anyway. So it seems like your hangover will be a little less. But I'll do a glass of wine with with some meat, and that's most of my diet. I mean, we were talking about before, like the keto flu, and is the keto bad for you? And this is the thing is all these things are interconnected because again, we're still talking about conspiracies because there's a conspiracy of the sugar industry and the food industry to tell you that you remember the food pyramid. I mean, I'm turning
Oh yeah. I remember they used to push like, you got to have dairy, you got to have bread, you got to have this. And it's like, we thought that when we were kids, like, oh, you have to eat these 5 food groups in order to be healthy, but it was bullshit, man. Like you didn't have to eat, you didn't have to eat bread to be healthy. You don't have to have bread at all to be healthy. You don't even really have to have dairy you don't have to have dairy to be healthy.
you
You
don't
know?
and you don't have to eat carbs or sugar. This idea that like you need some sugar to survive is complete bullshit. I've been playing basketball and sports for a long time, and if I didn't eat before playing or have some type of like something that had some calories before playing, if I played long enough, I would get lightheaded. I'm like, oh fuck, I didn't eat enough, or my blood sugar is low. I thought it was because I didn't eat enough. What it was I had my body dependent on sugar and glucose and carbs. So what happened was that once that dropped, my blood sugar dropped. All of a sudden, I'm like, I feel like shit, and I feel like I didn't have enough.
The first time, was it the first time that you did the keto diet? Is this what you're talking about?
I'm saying in general, before I started doing a keto diet, yeah, that's what would happen before I started doing.
Yeah.
And then what I learned was like, okay, why my body's reacting this way is because it doesn't make any sense for your body to react that way. Because everybody's been in a situation where you haven't ate for a long time, you're hungry, and then all of a sudden that hunger vanishes. Well, what happens is that your body goes in ketosis. I mean, the reason why we call fat storage is because that's exactly what your body's doing. Your body's, I mean, the human body's constantly trying to survive. That's its purpose, is to survive.
Yeah.
It stores fat for survival purposes. It's so when I don't have food, because since the beginning of time, for the most part, food wasn't guaranteed. When I don't have food, I'm storing this fat to burn for energy so I can get food and survive. And so what happens is that if you never stop giving it food, if you never stop giving it specifically glucose and carbs, then, which turn into glucose, then you never stop storing fat. It just keeps staying there. So the idea is to constantly put your body in ketosis, or at least try to do it often, where you complete, like, for example, today I haven't ate anything all day. It's a little past 8 o'clock p.m. Eastern time. Haven't ate a thing. Went to the gym first thing this morning before I went to work, and I'm fine. Not I'm barely even hungry yet. And
You still do you do free weights and stuff like that too?
yeah, I do.
Yeah.
I still do the typical, like, kind of like the bodybuilding type of routine, where I'll do like 2 muscle groups a day. I start
Yeah, right. Rest and then another muscle group. Yeah. And then keep the cardio at least 3 times a week, 4 times a week, something like that.
hate cardio. So I do cardio. Like, my trick in doing cardio to keep my cardio halfway decent is I'll
You
go
do 15 minutes and then do it and then keep it going during the workout.
I'll do like 5 to 10 minutes as fast as I can until my heart wants to blow out. Because what that does for me, it wakes my body up. Like, sometimes you get to the gym, like, so it's like once you get breathing heavy and your heart rate's pumping, then once I get into weights, I've already woken up my body. And and the thing is, I play now. Just recently, we started playing basketball indoors. It was nice. I was in Florida. I got to play at LA Fitness indoors.
I just visited Florida too, man. Like, I know what you're talking about. It's like being in old America, but better. It's yeah, it's nice.
You forget that, like, this shit's still happening in our states, because it's like, oh shit, like, people don't really give a shit down here. I mean, there's still
Yeah.
a few assholes down there. I saw a few people where, my wife's cousin, we went out to eat, and we were all, it was hilarious because we're in a restaurant that is like butts to nuts. Like, everybody's like super close to one another. It's packed. It's a Thursday night, and everybody's in line waiting to get in because the whole restaurant's packed. And this lady's like, says something to my wife's cousin. I didn't hear it. He only told me afterwards, or I probably would have said something. But he's like, "Oh, don't stand so close to my husband. We're still in a pandemic." And it's like, I told my wife's cousin, like, why don't you ask that fucking lady, what are you doing having a casual, night out at restaurant if you feel like we're still at risk of the pandemic? I'm like, it's all it's done. It's given people who are assholes the green light to be an asshole, because it's like, oh, I'm being an asshole, but I get to kind of disguise it with, like, caring about others. It's like, sure, like, you're just
Right. Exactly. That's exactly what it is. Yeah. Yeah. I know. I just got back from there too. And I feel like I listen to a lot of news too about business news. Miami is about to become the new LA. More people are just going down. Businesses are moving there. And if that doesn't tell you something, regardless of what mainstream media is telling you, or so many people are dying in Florida, it's bullshit. It's bullshit, because if that were true, why is half the country trying to move down there right now? Why are businesses, even from, like, not just in the United States, but from like Brazil and all these other places, going to Florida right now? Because we have maybe one governor out of everybody just saying, I'm not buying this bullshit. And that's how their governor is too. He's like, we're just going to, like, live our lives. Sorry.
Well,
if you want to wear a mask, that's up to you. But, like,
DeSantis, even though, and I'm not, I haven't paid too much attention to DeSantis or the other guy from Texas who just opened up all of Texas and lifted the mandatory masks thing in Texas. Like, now there's no mandatory masks. I think it's one of, like, a handful of states that have done that. I don't know if they're just like every other politician, that they're crooked, but in regards to this situation, like, hey, you know what? I'm with them, man. They were saying all the right things. You look at I saw the press conference. I think it was Monday, when they talked about lifting the mandating masks and letting all restaurants and businesses work at 100% capacity. He's like, listen, he's like, as a business, if you still want to have people wear masks, do it. But he's like, I don't.
yes, your choice.
Things aren't bad enough. And again, I would argue that things were never bad enough, but using the mainstream bullshit numbers, the inflated numbers, he's saying, he's like, things aren't bad enough where it requires the state to get involved to have these regulations and these rules. So we're just going to get out of it. And if you don't feel safe, you can still live your life the way you want. But, you know, that's the thing that people don't understand. It's like, if the people who want to be free want to be free, it doesn't get in the way of the people who still want to be masked and isolated. But the people who want to be isolated want to push their way of life on everybody else, and it gets in the way of those people who want to be free. So it's like, if everybody just decide like, hey, you know what, do what the fuck you want. If you want to wear a mask for the rest of your life, if you want to wear 2 masks, if you want to wear 2 masks and a condom everywhere you go, whatever the hell you want, like, I don't care, you know, like, just let me do me. You know, since the beginning of this whole thing, I've had people over my house every weekend. My kids are unvaccinated. I'm pretty well informed in regards to the whole vaccine thing and big pharma, and I've had many doctors and people in the past who have had quite a few just bumping heads with big pharma and battles with big pharma. So I understand how strong and powerful they are with pushing propaganda. And so I knew pretty quickly that, like, okay, something's going on here. And I also understood the vaccine agenda pretty well. And I could see how this was kind of another technique of pushing the vaccine agenda. And then once everybody starts seeing Event 201 and people realize, that holy shit, like, just like September 11th, when they told us, like, oh, I could have never predicted planes hitting a tower, and then a memo comes out that Bush had saying that they were thinking about hitting the towers with planes. It's same thing with this. It's like, oh, we could have never predicted this, and then you find all these videos of Dr. Fauci talking about Trump, the greatest bump in the road that Trump would have to deal with, the next administration would have to deal with, is some virus. You hear Bill Gates talking about it.
Gates having patents on this stuff. Yeah. 7 different pharmaceutical companies, fighting for a different type of vaccine before the coronavirus even came out. They're trying to make this thing. This was like years ago, talking about they're all fighting to try to get it first. And yeah, it's way too stupid. It's beyond stupid at this point, right? Which is the most frustrating thing to me, because just trying to get people to think critically. Just back up and just think critically. That's all. And I got so frustrated with it, man, that I just didn't even want to talk about it. I was one of those people that I just can't talk about it anymore, because I'm getting angrier and angrier and angrier at how the stupidity is of this. And I would listen to No Agenda too, and that's what they would talk about. It's like, this is essentially just a bad cold. They're using the hype of a really bad cold. I'm not saying it's not a bad cold and it doesn't kill old people or people with immune deficiencies, just like a lot of diseases do, but that's what it is. That's what it's doing. And they found a way to isolate us all. Meanwhile, they're building a global satellite grid system too. That was crazy. The Pentagon launched one before Elon Musk ever even got involved with it. It was just some really weird stuff going on. And now that the vaccine's rolling out everywhere, all these mandates are starting to lift up, right? Like, come on, man.
Yeah,
really.
You have the vaccines rolling out that they're profiting from. You have the election behind us. So you have all these reasons that now, people are becoming more aware of the PCR test, and how, what some people are calling the gold standard of COVID testing is really a test that could find insignificant amounts of anything if you run enough cycles, which I'm sure. And so now they're finally lowering the cycles that they're running that. So they're just creating the perfect cocktail to give Joe Biden all the credit for everything. And everybody's like, oh, look, under Joe Biden, everything, got better. And so, I mean, it was just so obvious that it was political, that so much of this was political. To me, like, what's really sickening, and we all, prior to this, we all knew how sick and disgusting most politicians were, that they, to be a politician, and especially one that is well known and will one day run for president, you have to be a huge piece of shit. Like, you
yeah, I always thought that too. I'm like, why would you even want that kind of power to begin with?
I mean, I don't want responsibility. I mean, we talk about it now. Like, you want to do commercials. You want to, you don't want to do all the stuff that comes with running a radio station. You just want to do the fun part. Like, we're trying to make our lives as stressless as possible. And these guys are like, I want to run for president. Oh, I know they're going to go in my closet and rip all the skeletons out. And I know that they're going to, amplify everything I say and make it sound worse. But my desire for power is so great that I'm willing to do all that. Like only a crazy person would go through and then
Yeah.
put your family through it, put everything, your whole history, I mean, everything you've ever done is going to be exposed if they can. And it's like to me, it's like we all know they're pieces of shit, and yet like people have a hard time believing that politicians would lie or make this seem worse than it really is for political purposes. It's like they've been doing that their whole careers. That's what they do. They lie. They lie to you to get your vote. And I forget who was it, Mark Twain or I don't know, maybe somebody else who said if voting mattered, they wouldn't let you do it. It's that's exactly it. Like you don't even get to vote on most issues. You get to vote on a politician who you cross your fingers after they get your vote that they'll stay true to their word, and it's like that's just ridiculous. I mean, look at like Joe Biden. He's already bombing Syria, and yet he's supposed to be the candidate of peace. I mean, nobody voted for Joe Biden. People voted for Trump.
Oh, he supposedly. I mean, I'm probably going to piss some people off, but Joe Biden supposedly won by just the biggest landslide or had the most votes any president in history's ever had. Bullshit.
There's no
Everywhere I go, I see Trump signs. Everywhere I go, that's bullshit. There's no way, man. There's no way. Like I think there's a. This is why, like, I like to talk about conscious exploration, understanding the psyche, the subconscious, even the occult, esoteric, magic. I want people to be empowered and think critically so bad and see what they're capable of so bad, because there's this stupid, naive belief that goes around that we live in a world where if you work hard and you play fair, that you're going to, you're going to have the dream life and you can become president and have everything that you want if you just work hard and play fair. Meanwhile, the world is run by people that do everything to not be fair and to make sure that they don't have to work hard. They want a lot of people to believe that we live in a world where everybody's nice and fair, and there's no way a politician would do that, or oh no, our government wouldn't hurt us or kill us or things like they would never do that. They're people. It's bullshit. Like we're run by wolves. That's it. Like you got to become you don't have to become a wolf in your life, but you have to at least have some type of lion spirit about you, where like I'm not going to let this shit happen, but I'm not going to be a sheep either, you know, because it's naive. I believed that at one point, Ricky. I did. Like when people start talking to me about conspiracy or chemtrails or this, I'd be like, no, I mean, you guys you're in victim mode. You're just thinking that someone's out to get you all the time, right? They're just people until you really start looking and seeing how evil these some bitches really are. That's when it gets kind of scary. That's when it gets scary. And I think people get so invested in their ideas, just like a religion or whatever, that they can't even see what's right. Either they can't see what's in front of their face, or they're afraid of their paradigm shifting so much they're not going to know what to do.
I think it's like pro wrestling or reality TV. Like we know that it's rehearsed and that it's scripted, but you can still if you watch it enough, you get caught up in the characters and you forget that it's rehearsed and scripted. Like
Yeah.
it's similar with politics. You watch enough of it and you think this person. Like, oh, he sounds honest. He seems sincere. I mean, you look at Cuomo, that piece of shit. Like him and his brother, they're both pieces of shit. Like, he's calling out the president because he couldn't get him enough ventilators. Then come to find out there was a warehouse full of them, and everybody who's put on them, 90% of them were dying. He hid the numbers of the people that were the old people that were being sent back to the old homes and taken out of the hospitals. All this stuff. I mean, he's not a good person, but if he could capitalize on this whole thing, he was, and he was capitalizing on just tearing Trump apart and saying that the blood's on his hands and he's responsible for all this and all that stuff. I mean, if you just go back through history, and that's the thing, people have such awful long-term memory, and or they don't spend enough time putting things in perspective. Because you look at like Vietnam, for example, like that's a war that we all have come to the conclusion that, like, yeah, we weren't there because we're trying to defend anybody or save anybody, and it was an unjust war, and a lot of people were exposed to Agent Orange, a lot of people died, a lot of people have PTSD, all for unjust reasons. And then, similar to like Iraq, well, what does that tell you? That tells you that politicians will make decisions for their benefits, even if it means millions of people dying, millions of lives lost, millions of people even not just physically but mentally being scarred forever, never being able to live a normal life, somebody who doesn't have a arm, a leg, somebody who wakes up with night terrors, somebody who has severe PTSD and can never have a full-time job and live a normal
Yeah.
life. Like, those people exist, and all the politicians do is like, yeah, maybe we fucked up, maybe we shouldn't have went to Iraq. So what does that tell you? That tells you that that's a horrible person who doesn't have any connection to the average person. That's the thing. Like, people don't realize when Newsom is going out to eat at the most expensive restaurant like in the US, a Napa Valley, and his vineyard is still open and his kids are still going to school, but yet he's telling everybody else to stay at home, be afraid, and only put your mask down while you're putting food in your mouth and put it up while you chew. Like, all this nonsense. Like, he's doing that because he doesn't care, about the average person. He doesn't even care if what he's saying is complete bullshit, because to be a politician, you have to be good at acting. You have to be good at saying whatever needs to be said to get to the finish line. And
Yeah, that's it. There's only two things there's only two things they're concerned about is getting votes and making sure that the people that finance them get supported. That's it. Like if you took every politician and said, "Look, we're going to pass this new law that you guys don't get to wear suits anymore. No more suits and ties. We're going to put you in a situation where it's just like NASCAR. Every sponsor that gives you money, you have to put on your suit and you have to wear it. Then you can get up and talk to us, right? That would be more like that would be more real. That would be more real. Like if they stood there like NASCAR drivers with all of the people that are trying to get, their money and or their stuff done, that would be more real. But no, they put on suit and tie, they put on this image of power, and they're the savior and the other guy's the perpetrator. It's the savior perpetrator thing. And that's all it is a fucked up psychological game that they've been playing for a long time. I don't even believe in democracy anymore. And I know that sounds bad. Like, I'm not a communist. I don't believe in that either. But I don't believe in democracy either. You know?
you ever hear that quote, democracy is two wolves and a sheep deciding what's for dinner?
Well, yeah, I mean that's what it is. And another person in the Fringe FM chat, I think, and I'm pretty sure, yeah, it was Amanda said it too. She come in there, said like a democracy. It was the best quote I ever heard about democracy. It's like democracy is like the suggestion box at work in a corporation. That's all it is, right? You think you have power, really, by casting your vote, but at best, it's just a suggestion box. That's all it is. Like corporations come and say, well, put your concerns in the box, and you put it in the box and they come out and say, well, thanks. We're really appreciative that you addressed your concern and we're going to figure this out. They don't give a shit. They're just trying to keep the mob back. That's all. That's all they're doing.
Yeah, but honestly, I think it's even worse than that, because I think as a philosophy, it's flawed. Because when you think about it, this idea of democracy, that means that the people vote on something or want something, and whatever the majority is, that's what we go with. That should be the best option for everybody. That doesn't make any sense, because so we know there's minorities in America, right? If all the white people, which are obviously the majority, decide that, like, hey, we should bring back slavery, let's vote on it, and it's like, well, this is democracy, we all voted on it, like, we just won it
Yeah.
fair and square, like, we didn't cheat, we had a vote on it. I know, so, like, there's always going to be a dominant, a majority, and just because it's the majority, it doesn't make it right. So, like, this idea of democracy of, like, okay, we all vote on something. Well, if just because, for example, music, right? Just because this album sold way more than this other album doesn't mean that that album is good. It could be complete horseshit. It just, so it just, to me, like, this whole theory of democracy, this whole idea of, like, like I said, like, it's like two wolves and a sheep deciding what's for dinner. Like, well, there's the two, if they vote on it, the two wolves win, that means the sheep's done. So it's like, well, it's democracy, there's nothing to be angry about. So, like, we constantly use these terms, like, even like you said, like, oh, it's not, you said, oh, it's not like I'm a communist or whatever. Like, these isms are used over and over again, and
Yeah.
they've been so demonized that you can't even explore what the philosophy actually is, or what the ideas behind those words are. Just using them, people already have a quick, you know uh reaction, like, That's
Yeah,
bad.
you're a socialist, you're a liberal, you're a commie,
I got it though.
you're a conservative, you're a fascist, you know, like whatever. You
Yeah,
know, I'm just a person that just wants to be heard and I just want to be free. That's it.
yeah, and these ideas, like, I've had Professor Richard Wolff on, who's like, a historian in regards to socialism and Karl Marx, and he's done a lot of debates and stuff, and I like a lot of what he says, and I agree with a lot of what he says, and then I'll have a lot of libertarians on. I've had Adam Kokesh on, I've had a lot of just my close friends like Richard Grove are libertarians and anarcho libertarians, and so I like to explore ideas. I don't like to use a label. I don't like to be pigeonholed in a group because I'm like, okay, well, this is where I stand right now. These are the ideas that make the most sense to me right now. But it doesn't mean I'm going to stop exploring other ideas or ones that have been demonized that I haven't even explored yet. Like socialism, for example. During the Reagan administration, we invaded plenty of Latin American countries because we're fighting socialism, and the truth was we're fighting for the United Fruit Company or whatever else
Yeah.
was
Yeah.
involved. It's like it had nothing to do with socialism. If we cared about these isms being dangerous, ideologies being dangerous, why the hell are we best friends with Saudi Arabia? I mean, Sharia law sounds like a ideology we should be worried about, and yet, like, we're okay with that. So it's all facade, it's all theater. This idea, it's like Wars of Racket by General Smedley Butler. That whole thing of like, after he retired, he's like, all the freedoms and all these things that they sold me, the idea that I was fighting for, it was all BS. I wasn't fighting for those things. I was fighting for corporations and for governments and to help just
Yeah.
yeah.
That war was about securing oil, and it was about securing oil and all of their buddies like Halliburton and all these guys that had guaranteed contracts because we were in there to get their $1 billion oil industry. It was obvious. I mean, it was right in front of our face, but they play the psychological game with us. They've always done that. And even when you're talking about people with Agent Orange and people that are missing limbs, like you're the guy that genuinely cares about the troops, but they played that card on, well, you're against the war, you're against the troops, you're a bad person, you're a piece of shit. That's I
What
mean, anybody that has an IQ above 80 should see that psychological game, right? So that's the most frustrating thing about it. When you're the one that actually cares, like, why are you sending them out to die? Really, but you're the bad guy, right? Because you don't support the war. It's bullshit.
I
It's
would say
stupid.
that all the time. I'm like, the most pro troops thing I could say is being anti-war. I'm like, that's the most because I'm basically saying I don't want anybody to die unless it's a last resort. So like this idea
Yeah.
of anti-war was anti-troops. I'm like, that's crazy. Like it doesn't logically, it doesn't even make any sense. But like you said, it was such a clever trick because it made everybody feel like, oh, if I want to support these poor guys who have PTSD and are losing limbs and going overseas and fighting, if I want to support them, I just support them by supporting the war, not by saying, hey, they shouldn't even be there in the first place. So it's wild. Like it was a very clever psychological trick, and it worked because all the super patriotic people were all, and again, they played on our emotions right after September 11th. Of course, people's emotions are high. People are not thinking logically, they're thinking emotionally. And it was a great time to be like, hey, let's just keep talking about Iraq and keep talking about Iraq and keep talking about Afghanistan, even though there's no dots to connect and they're not really connected and they don't have anything to do with September 11th. I'll just keep using words like terrorism and Iraq and September 11th, and people will start connecting the dots for me. And next thing you know, people are like, yeah, I think this is going to do something and this is going to get us some type of justice for what happened. It was so silly. And the thing is, these tricks are played over and over again. This trick was just different. I mean, previously the tricks were played by propaganda from the military industrial complex. Now people are realizing like, oh, what's a bigger threat than the military industrial complex? Big pharma, because they spend more money in
Oh,
commercials,
yeah.
they spend more money in marketing, they spend I challenge anybody to watch the commercials for the news for a little bit. It's just a matter of time before you see a pharmaceutical commercial, which means what? That means that they are paying the salary of that person who's supposed to give you the news. So you don't think they have some influence? Just like we were saying earlier about me being concerned about doing a commercial for a product, and the next thing you know, that product wants me to say things like this or not talk about that or whatever. It's exactly what happens. I mean, these pharmaceutical companies have such influence. When the real pandemic was happening, and that's the pill epidemic, that young people
Yeah,
were
like
dying, taking all these
the
pills.
opiate epidemic and all that stuff. Yeah,
About it. Where were the politicians talking about it? Nobody would. Why? Because they're getting money from pharmaceutical companies. Because, like you said, all they do is lie and try to get reelected, which means getting campaign money. They so much of their time is spent just getting more campaign money. And so, what does that mean? All those people have influences on what they're saying and what they're doing and what they vote for. Jen Brimey, who has that the podcast Congressional Dish, and I don't agree with her on a lot of things, but she says it on her show. She reads all the bills, and she's like, you can see, you can just connect the dots of like why this person voted like this. Just go see who gave them campaign money, and then you know why they voted that way. You can
that's
almost,
it.
yeah, I mean,
All
that's
you got to do is follow the money, man. That's it. And you would think that we know that by now. Like how many times are we? And even the presidents get crazier and crazier. They're down to like cartoon characters now. Like I feel like there's some kind of weird test going on, right? What? Like how crazy can we make this until they actually see that they're being jacked around? Like we gave him Trump, and Trump's like this egotistical guy that'd be like, a business could be crashing, and he'd be like, "That's the best business ever." Like he was just in denial about certain things, but at the same time, he didn't take a lot of shit from people either, right? So he was just this crazy cartoon character, this massive ego that a lot of people liked him just because he was something different. He was something that was way outside the system, but it wasn't the solution. And then you got this other guy that's come along who talks about the hair rising up on his legs. He feels like he's half out of it all the time. You don't know. It doesn't even look like a real human sometimes. And I really feel like I know it sounds stupid, but maybe there's like an alien race or something just kind of messing with us. Like, you know what I mean? Like using us like lab rats just to see the kind of stupid shit that we do, that we're willing to do, that
well,
we're willing to put ourselves through.
of divide and conquer and making us and making people believe, and they do that every election year where they're like, the person who's in power is the root of all evil, the next person is going to be the savior. Last time I saw this much just hatred towards a politician, it was, well, not last time, but one of the times was when Bush, and after the Iraq war, and when people realized like, holy shit, this guy's a war criminal, and Cheney's a piece of shit, and all this stuff. And then you see Obama, oh my god, he's so drastically different than the guy we just had. He's our savior. And it's same thing, like Trump felt like the savior because he was different than not just the last politician but all politicians, because he was just saying what what was on his mind. So you kind of felt like, okay, even though he lies, he's gonna slip because he's so just random with what he says, and he's never really reading a script. And the other thing too, I think the one thing that people liked about him, or at least one thing that I kind of liked a little bit about him, was one, it seemed like he didn't push back against the military industrial complex. His geopolitical policies and stuff like that wasn't really any different than anybody else. He didn't start any wars, but he didn't finish any wars either. He didn't end any wars. But his push with big pharma, he did seem to push back on big pharma a little bit. But I think the big thing was that, like we said, it's all theater, but everybody played along, right? So it's like
Yeah.
it's almost like everybody knew that Hulk Hogan and Macho Man, or Andre the Giant, were friends, but we pretend they didn't like each other, and they would pretend while they're on TV, but we would all play along, and never did we have a wrestler who would just go there and be like, you know what? This is all fake. This is rehearsed. This is all bullshit. Like almost just pushing back the curtain, and saying, hey, I'm not doing it anymore. Like I'm just gonna say you're fake news, or you have this agenda. You're asking me these questions because you're trying to make me look bad. It's like previously, what would happen is if a politician knew a newspaper was asking a leading question, or trying to get them to say something stupid so they could highlight it, a politician would play the game, right? They would be like, okay, I got to be careful. Let me word worded it this way. Let me word it that way. Let me try,
Yeah.
and then when the newspaper would do it, they would just kind of let it go, and they would play the political game by trying to correct. Oh, what I meant was this. Remember, like nobody would ever be like, you know what? I'm not playing the game at all. You're bullshit. Like you're lying. You're not even, you don't like me, and you're publishing fake news. You can't be trusted. Like nobody's ever just said like, hey, I'm not playing the game at all. And I think everybody knew that it was all theater, but when somebody openly talked about it, we enjoyed it. We enjoyed the fact that it's like, okay, now anybody who had any doubts, like now he's just calling it out,
Yeah,
right.
he's just saying things for what they are, like busting out. He would bust out liars and stuff all the time too. It was funny, but he would do it in like that playground fashion too, where like he'd just get the bigger insult in on him and like really bust him out. It was hilarious. I would watch Trump's Twitter just to see like what was he going to say today. Like who is he going to bust out or start shit with today? I mean we needed that stuff, right? But like now you asked me earlier, kind of like, I know we're circling back around here, but you asked me earlier why I started the Fringe. I feel like I'm on my soul mission now, man, because I feel like the people that are on the Fringe, you could call it Fringe if you want, but the Fringe are the people that are pushing or going. It doesn't matter if it's paranormal, conspiracy, mystery, quantum physics, science. These are the people that are waking people up and evolving folks by going out where things aren't as popular or asking questions or even crazy stuff sometimes to try to evolve us. So I feel like the Fringe FM that's what it is. It's evolving people from staying in that sheeple thing, right? Even if like you go try to get the answers about uh politics or something or this politician and I go try to get the answer about I don't know, an out of body experience or something, we're both going to come back and talk and figure out, well, this was bullshit, but there was actually something to this, you know. That's what I think is good that's going on here with this too, man. You know. Um and you're kind of like me. I like talking to you because you just kind of go all over the place and
Yeah.
talk about everything that's on your mind too.
Yeah.
It's cool. It really is cool.
Yeah, but it's so true though. Like so many things that seem so crazy that it can't possibly be real or true. You dig in it a little bit and there's some truth there, and that's what makes it interesting is that
You got to go look, right? Because you're like, I don't know if I want to, if I believe that. Like, really, is that what's happening? And then you go look, like, oh shit, you know, like there's really some. That's why a lot of people get they when they start going down conspiracy rabbit holes because they really start seeing some hardcore truths. That it just shakes up their paradigm, and then you start thinking, well, what the hell else have they lied to us about? Now you can't trust anything, right? So now you're just trying to find something to trust when it comes to systems. And I don't think, and I'm saying systems in a general sense, the pharmaceutical system, the monetary system, the government, uh, the food, all of it. There's no systems. Uh, YouTube, social media, all these systems are just there's nothing we can trust. So no, we have to start doing stuff on our own, whether it's growing our own food or like what you're talking about, the keto thing, right? Like you could still hunt. People should hunt. I know that sounds crazy, but people could hunt their own food. You're not going to die if the supermarket closes, but they make you think they're going to make you think you will, right? You're going to die if the supermarket closes. What? Like I can grow my own food. I can hunt and fish. It's not just a southern thing. Everybody can do that stuff. It's not just a western thing. Everybody should have a garden. Everybody should. I think people should have community gardens. Like you see it. Like sometimes you ride down the road, you see these old people. They're kind of like selling fruit and stuff. They got the right idea. What if everybody did that? You wouldn't even have to go to the grocery store and depend on these assholes anymore. You
well,
know?
about all the trees that state money spends planting, why don't you plant fruit trees? So if you're homeless or you're walking down the street, you can just pick a pear and you can just pick an apple and you can feed some people, and I mean just make it clear that like the city or the town doesn't have any liability if you get sick or whatever. But I think people would be okay with that trade-off of like, okay, well, they don't have any liability, but we get to feed some people. I have a pear tree in my yard. I don't do anything to it, and every year I get pears and a decent amount of them. So it's just like you could be planting those everywhere if the goal was to actually help people and save people and do some good in the world. But as we discussed, I mean, these politicians, I mean, it's all the illusion of they're working for you and they're there to help you or whatever. And to me, it was stunning how many people fell for that illusion when they're afraid, you know. And again, this is kind of similar to September 11th, when people are emotional, when you're showing death numbers and showing
Oh yeah.
fake videos of hospitals that are full because it's really a Italian hospital. It's not, you know, CBS got caught with that fake video of showing, they were talking about hospitals being full in New York, and next thing you know, somebody shows a screenshot of some European station that showed the exact same footage, and it's like, wait, wasn't even in America, and you're
And
showing.
they're not being held accountable for it either.
No, they're not.
You
Well,
know,
they have to, because what will happen is that big tech will go and just censor anybody who says anything. So everybody who isn't believing the mainstream narrative is censored. So then all you see is people who is drinking the Kool-Aid and do believe the nonsense. So then you believe that, like, oh yeah, I mean, this makes sense. I think it has to make sense because everybody believes the same thing. I remember at one point my wife saying, like, you know, she's like, I don't know, all these businesses are shutting down. This is like right in the beginning when everything was locking down quickly. She's like, don't you think there has to be something for like everybody just being on board with this? And I'm just like, no, everybody's just being tricked, you know, and the people who aren't being tricked are pushing this for other agendas. And
it's like peer pressure. What? Yeah, that's what she defined right there was the exact definition of peer pressure. Or that's all it is. That it's an old trick. It works every time. Get everybody on board. Get everybody saying, "Yeah, this is the right thing to do." Or it just like when you tell your kids, "Yeah, you know, just because everybody at the party is doing lines of cocaine and it's fun and they say it's the right thing to do, doesn't mean it's what you should do." Like we train our children to challenge these types of things, right? And as adults, what kind of example are we setting them? What by not like do our kids? And I think about that too. Like I don't want to embarrass my son or anything like that. But at the same time, what kind of example am I setting by showing him that I always go along with whatever and I don't really stand for anything or don't care when I know something's right, you know? Because if we don't uh, this is a whole nother tangent I'll go on too, because if we don't start showing people that we're actually real men and real women with spines, like the people that kind of created this country, well, we're doomed, man. You know, like I don't think everybody's snowflakes or whatever like that, but I think there's a lot of just people that are just trapped by their desires and trapped by their fears, and that's what's being used against them. You know, you're trapped by your desire and your fear, and you don't stand for anything. You know, to be able to stand up to a crowd. I guess maybe that's why I like your show and Ryan Gable and all these other people, because I like people that will go into a crowd of people and say, I'm not buying this shit. You know, doesn't matter how popular it is. I don't think it's right. You know, that's admirable. We need more people like that.
yeah, I mean, it's super easy to just join a group and just say, okay, this is my group, I'm gonna agree with everybody in this group, and then you're a part of that group, and then you get the support of that group. It's much harder when you say, okay, well, I have libertarian friends who aren't going to like the fact that I'm exploring and saying I like some socialist ideas, and then I have socialist friends that don't like the fact that I'm in exploring and enjoying a conversation with a libertarian. But I don't care, because I'm like, I have to be honest and I have to be truthful, and I have to, this whole thing is, in life in general, not just podcasting, but podcasting is a part of it. It's a journey, and I've used this metaphor before in the past, where, I say that, like, life's this giant puzzle, and everything you learn and everything you better understand is one more piece to that puzzle. And at the end of your journey, more than likely, you're not going to have all the pieces, and you're not going to know exactly what that image is, but you'll have enough pieces where that image becomes more clear. And so that's all it's about. It's about just gathering those pieces. And if I neglect some pieces because my team says, hey, don't look at that piece, or don't go there, or don't go there, then, I'm kind of preventing the ability or the opportunity of gathering some new pieces that make sense of all this. So to me, that's what it's all about. I never, you know, I don't worry too much about sounding like an idiot. I don't worry too much about, like, people. I mean, obviously, you want your peers to like you. You want people I've always been that type of person where I try to get along with everybody. But I don't, if somebody gets mad at me because I disagree with them, then I also know that I'm polite enough to have a polite discussion about it, and we can just explore those ideas. And if somebody's
Yeah.
not willing to discuss something with somebody they disagree with, then it's probably not somebody I want around in the first place.
Yeah, because the people that just get triggered about everything and they can't have a discussion. The best things in life get done by people that are disagree, right? The best things, yeah, I mean, like the best leaps that we make are by people that are willing to say, well, I might be wrong, or maybe I'm wrong, or say you're wrong, I don't believe that, and say, okay, well, why, and then just have a discussion about it. Like the whole freaking Babylonian the Talmud from the Jews, that was made that way. They put two rabbis across the table and they just started talking. I'm not advocating for it, but I'm saying these people would debate forever, that they made laws out of it and religions out of it. Like, why can't we do that as people? We don't have to make religions, but we can change things. And I do like asking everybody this question too, because what are the solutions to this? I think the solutions are from the ground up, like in our local communities. I think that's where you start. You start in your local community and you work out, because a lot of people are trying to fix everything from the world in, right? Like, let's fix the world. And I don't know. I think like the Ithaca hours I was telling you about, how they do that exchange there. I think if you start setting examples in communities everywhere, then eventually things will change, or at least balance out. Well, I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I think we're all a part of the solution. Every podcaster that decides the podcast, every person who has an imagination like yourself, who thinks about doing something like Fringe dot FM, we're all a part of the solution. I honestly think that it's if very few good things came out of 2020, but one of the great things that came out of 2020 is that there was like this invisible battle war that was constantly going on. There was people like yourself or me who were constantly talking about, the threat of big pharma, the threat of censorship, the threat of, the vaccine agenda, the transhumanism agenda, all these agendas and things that we should worry about. And a lot of people were just going on with their everyday lives and like, yeah, okay, you're doing the fighting over there, but I'm gonna go to work, I'm gonna go to the park, I'm gonna go out to eat with my family, and you just keep fighting, keep doing that thing, keep getting angry about geopolitics and bombing in Syria, whatever, doesn't affect my life. And then the issue finally came to everybody's personal life, and now everybody had to become a little bit more aware of what was going on, and maybe unwillingly exposed to the Bill Gates conspiracies and the vaccine conspiracies. I mean, there's people who didn't even if they disagree with the bill what Bill Gates's history is and what his true intentions are. There's people who didn't even know that there was a group of people that thought he was evil that now know at least those people exist. So it's like
Yeah.
so it's like so many people have been exposed to all these agendas, regardless where you stand on this any specific agenda. And so I think there has it almost fast tracked or has sped up people's consciousness and opening up to the fact that maybe we have been lied to. Maybe this is all a illusion. Maybe I can't, ignorance isn't bliss. I can't just say ignorance is bliss forever, because eventually those conspiracies start having a effect on my life, on forcing vaccines on my children, on not letting the business that I work at stay open, or whatever it may be, not letting me travel to go see family, or not go to the hospital to go see a loved one that's dying. All these issues, you couldn't ignore these things anymore. So now you start looking for answers, like, well, why is this happening? Is there some truth to these conspiracy theories? I think that people are also now looking for solutions, like we've been discussing. Like, people are like, okay, these are the issues, we're more aware of the issues, and now we also are aware of how huge these issues are. The next step is finding solutions. So I think it's kind of fast tracked this whole thing. Like, I think for a lot of people in the alternative media for a long time have wanted normies, for lack of a better term, to really not just ignore these issues. Like, hey, these are big issues. You talk to people about them, and it goes in one ear out the other. Like, they're just like, yeah, they just didn't seem concerned about it. But now you can't help but be concerned about it because it's
Right.
affected everyone. And that's the whole thing about the COVID thing. You talked about it, and it happened a lot during our Union of Unwanted shows, where sometimes we would talk about COVID fatigue, and Charlie and I and a few others would always be like, yeah, but if we stop talking about it, like, there's news story and news story and news story and one more piece of evidence that shows we've been lied to, and another piece of evidence that shows like, there's so many things to discuss that if we just ignore it all, like, I just feel like we can't. We have to keep exposing it because there's so much to talk about. But and then on the other hand, it's like, I'm fucking sick of talking about it. I'm sick of,
Yeah.
I'm just,
Well, it's kind of a warrior thing too, because this is why a lot of people don't get held accountable, right? Because eventually this is all going to wash away in some form or fashion. The world's going to change. It'll go back the way it was or whatever. It washes away and people forget about it. Oh, I remember the COVID thing. I remember that. And the people that were responsible for the bullshit never get held accountable to. It doesn't matter if it's the war. It doesn't matter what it is. Like, time comes along and people's lives get back to normal, and they know that psychologically too. They're like, oh, eventually when they start getting the things back that they want in their life and things are better, they won't even worry about that we did this to them, because they're just glad to have their life back. So you kind of need to have people to keep talking about it, to say, no, that's a criminal. That person, like, they should be held accountable for what they did. I That's the most frustrating thing to me about all this stuff, all the way back to 9/11, is where's the accountability?
yeah,
Where
but
are the people that should be getting locked up for this stuff?
yeah, I mean, Bush is still painting pictures, shitty pictures, just like Hitler did. Another evil person who was a shitty painter, and he's just living his life painting pictures, like he wasn't responsible for fucking the huge tragedy that was Afghanistan and Iraq, that now still is, obviously a mess over there, and he just lives his life and it's fine. He could care less, and so yeah, that's a huge issue, and unfortunately, I think you're right. I think you're absolutely right. Once people, and that's the other thing. It's almost like, remember gas prices when they were like super hiked up, and then they'd come down just a little bit. They were still way higher than we were used to, but they would come down a little bit, and we're like, this is good. I'm like, I'm happy because they went down a little bit. It's like, yeah, but we're still getting fucked. We're just
Yeah,
getting.
you let it go. The fact you let it go that they're still doing it to you. They know it's all psychology, man. They know. They
Oh,
know.
Edward Bernays, and yeah, without a doubt, manufacturing consent. Hotep Jesus said something like, when he was on my show, my last episode, he's like, if I give you 50 feet of chain and you're a dog, are you free? No, of course not. If I give you 100 feet of chain, are you free? No. Or if I give you 1,000,000 feet of chain, are you free? No. And that's kind of like the same idea. Like, you're seeing it now where people are like, oh, dude, I'm so excited you're letting restaurants open. Oh, I'm so excited. Like, we're supposed to be excited about the fact that they're just giving us a little bit more chain. Like, we're still chained down, but they're just giving us a little bit more chain. And so yeah,
Yeah.
but you're right. Like, people are so sick of this, and that you can't help but be excited to have some normalcy back and have some sense of the life you remember back. That people are you're gonna just be excited, even though you're still being screwed and things aren't back to the way they used to be. But you're going to be excited, and you're going to take it, and you're going to give praise to the people who gave it to you, even though they're probably the same criminals that took it from you in the first place. So it's yeah, it's wild. But
Yeah.
Joe, for people who are listening, for let's I want to end this on talking about Fringe.fm. I want people to know where they can get it, what exactly is on it, what type of content they can find on it, and possibly the future plans for it.
Yeah. Thanks, man. I appreciate that. Well, the Fringe FM is like, it's actually used to be the Fringe FM, but now it's Fringe.fm. If you go to the Fringe.fm, that's our production services. But Fringe.fm, it's a new digital radio platform. Basically, it's not another paranormal or conspiracy network. It's more of a blend of what Fringe is it's more of a blend of everybody going out to do whatever they can to find the truth about whatever. And we even we're bringing on like fun shows too, like mystery stuff. It's essentially bringing what was cool about radio back to it, right? Like what was cool about radio. And I don't want a bunch of people on the station that agree with everything. I want like a big I just want the claws to go out to the edges and find the truth. And that's basically what the Fringe is. And that website's at fringe.fm. Um I mean, like you have the show on there now. I got a show on there now. A lot of people have shows on there, and it's really cool. What we do have planned in the future is we're trying to eventually we want to get into more terrestrial syndication, but we also want to kind of build the podcast side too, right? We also want to we're wanting to find solutions about all the stuff that you're talking to us that we're talking about now. We're actually looking for some real solutions that work the best for everybody, and um, yeah, I mean, there's some stuff that I kind of like, I can't say, but I do hope that it all comes, I hope it all comes true, man, because what I want when this is all over is I want it to be a media company that people can like trust, you know, even if it's not massive. I just want people to find, hey, I can trust at least I know I can trust these guys, right? That's what it, that's what where we need to get at now. And we do events sometimes too. We did the Fringe Fest. We're still going to do stuff like that. Um, and we're just kind of taking it as we go right now because we're still developing new partnerships and stuff. What I'd like it to be in the future is a radio station, a podcast network, and also have like maybe a magazine or a publishing company too, like where people can really depend on it, right? In a way where the hosts on there and the content providers that are on there are the type of people like yourself that have integrity and that it's not going to be what we're used to, you know, because that's what we've been used to in radio forever. It's just either paranormal, you got the paranormal, you got political talk radio, right? And there's a little bit of cool stuff from both, but I think the really good stuff isn't that at all. I think it's what we're doing. Yeah, so it's just it's pretty easy. For most of our traffic comes from direct traffic, just people putting fringe.fm, and you can download the app on the both app stores too.
Yeah, I was going to say that I have an Android, so I know it's available on Android, and I'm assuming you already said it, but I was assuming that it's also available on Apple. So, and then you can also go right to the website. I know at the moment the website has a little bit more information. So if you guys want to see like the schedule and what time these shows are on, like Joe said, my show's on there Wednesday nights, I believe 6 p.m. Eastern to 9 p.m. or something along those lines. At least starts at 6 p.m. Eastern time. Charlie Robinson's on there with Macroaggressions, Grimerica. So you know, a lot of, and then I think last week we live streamed the Union of the Unwanted, which was cool. Something you brought up in the show that I want to ask you, we can do it on air. We're doing a Union of the Unwanted show this Monday, the 8th. We're doing it on the cult topic. I don't know if it's, I know you briefly talked about it. If that's something you want to join in on, let me know. I'll put you on.
That's actually something I could really talk about. Yeah, because I mean, it's kind of fringy, but like I'm an occultist, right? And people are like, "Ooh, that's crazy," but it's not. It's really it's empowering. You know, actually, it's empowering. It's it's what we all need to be doing, actually. And occult just means hidden. You know, so all of the stuff that's the most powerful thing about human beings have been hidden from them, and that's what I believe. I believe that we need to get that back, and then when we get that back, then we're not going to have these problems anymore. There won't be any more psychological tricks or anything. And that's just what I believe, though. I'm pretty passionate about that stuff. So, yeah, that'd be cool.
Awesome. Yeah, I'll make sure that you're invited to that. If you want to stream it live again, do that. That was awesome to have it streamed live on the app. So people download the app wherever the hell you are. If I know sometimes people have a hard time finding us, they don't know if we're gonna live stream on YouTube. Usually we live stream on our YouTube channel, on the Union of the Unwanted YouTube channel, which we started you know, not too long ago. But yeah, if you want to live stream it on fringe.fm, if that's possible, do it for
Absolutely.
one or any of them ever if you want. It's cool. I mean, that's one thing I really like about your platform is that I didn't have to stop doing what I was doing. You just found a way to make it work, and then I'm sure I didn't make your life easy by saying, "Hey, I don't know how long the shows are going to be. and I don't roughly I do 2 shows a week sometimes. So but it was awesome how flexible you were with everything, and I love the fact that people can still download the show, wherever they want, and then if they want to listen to it, they can tune in at 6 p.m. Eastern time. And like I said, there even if it's like pre-recorded, there is something about it being live that people like. So maybe
You should try it sometime, man. Like do live radio once and see how it goes. You
yeah,
should try it. It's fun.
yeah, I should actually. I that's something I've been thinking about doing for a while. It's like maybe doing a call-in show or something like that. But yeah, so people can tune in, and I think the cool thing is if you download the app, whenever you feel like listening to something, before you go to your typical podcast, go to fringe.fm and just see what's on, and you'll get exposed to some really interesting conversations or some real interesting content creators that you're not aware of yet. So I think that's kind of one of the benefits of a 24/7 radio station also, is that you can just tune in, at any time. You don't even know what's on, and you could be exposed to some cool show that you haven't been exposed to. And I think that obviously with the algorithms working against us, it's harder and harder to find new cool content creators. So that might be a method people might want to use, is just go on the app from whenever you have some free time, and before you listen to something on demand, see what's on fringe.fm. So yeah, so thanks, Joe. We're gonna have to do this more often, because as I can tell,
Yeah.
we could probably talk for hours.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. I definitely want to do this again. I'm the same way, man. Like I'll get on. I even have my audience tell me like, man, you just talk about all kinds of stuff, don't you? Like you just go all over the place. I'm like, yeah, I like talking. That's why I do it, right? And obviously you do too. So yeah, definitely we'll do it again. We will air the Union of the Unwanted on the Fringe FM too, Monday night. So yeah, that'll be cool. And thanks for having me on, man.
Yeah, thanks for joining me. Thanks for chatting. Yeah. Uh, eh, to me, like, I think what makes somebody really interesting is somebody who's super curious like yourself. Like, so you can talk a little bit about all these things because you're just super curious about so many topics. Instead of, I feel like if you're an expert on one thing only, it makes for not so interesting as a person, because you're forced to
Yeah.
only talk about that one thing. You talk about anything out of their expertise, they're lost, they have no understanding of it. And I think you can take things from all these different topics and subjects and help kind of mold your understanding of the world. So I think it's beneficial to kind of explore many different things. So yeah, so tune in to Joe. When's your show on?
My show comes on Monday through Friday at 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern, and it's live. And there's no telling what's going to happen. But we have cool guests on, and we take live calls, and sometimes we have psychic people on. Sometimes we talk about parapolitics and conspiracy. Sometimes we talk about the out of body experience. It's pretty eclectic, actually, but it's usually pretty fringy most of the time, right? And I mean, that's where you find the biggest truths, in my opinion.
Well, I know there's a lot of people in the East Coast who listen to my show late at night when they're bored. So now you can tune into your show late at night if you're bored at midnight. People working that night shift, looking for something to listen to. So definitely check it out. I love the Fringe FM app. It's easy. It's good quality. You just hit play, and it tells you what's playing, and or you can do it streaming right from the website if you want to put in the URL fringe.fm. So people, please check it out and support other great content creators like Joe, who are really making a difference in regards to giving us more opportunities and places to put our content. So thanks a lot, Joe. I really appreciate your time, and I'm sure we'll stay in touch and we'll talk soon.
Yeah, man, for sure. And let's do this again. And thanks for having me on.
Hey, thanks, Joe. Take care. Have a great night.
You too. Bye bye.